Okay. Well, I just wanna, I'm a Angelica Benavides, known as Dr. B. And I just want to say good morning to everybody, good afternoon, and maybe good evening to many of you. Everyone who's here, I know that we have something in common. So I love that you said yes. And I want to start by acknowledging something very, very important. Your presence in this space really, really matters. You are here not just because this work is easy, but because you care deeply about how systems actually function for students. This roundtable is a protected space for honest leadership conversations beyond programs, beyond compliance, and beyond service level fixes. So I want you to feel comfortable in having these dialogues and conversations today without holding back. Um, Anything that you feel that pertains to this topic, we're going to have three pillars that we're going to be talking about that will we're going to guide you and facilitate questions, and we'll have the discussions based on those questions. And today's not just about adding another initiative to your plate, it's about adding another initiative to really revolutionizing the educational system, really. And it's about stepping back and asking, are our systems truly aligned to how students learn, especially in, Mary and will be talking in a little bit about the English language learners and the cognitive overload. So I'm going to dive deeper and I'm going to let Donna talk a little bit and let's get the conversations going
All
here.
right. Well,
Mhm.
just like Angelica said, we are super excited for you all to be here. So, Angelica and I basically lead this, but we can't do everything ourselves. So, we always like to operate based on our friend Dr. Robbie Motter, and what she always says is that together we complete each other. We don't compete. And even in places where there's overlap, um, we know that if that overlap was not happening, we wouldn't be able to tackle a whole system. So this is education is one of the biggest systems out there, maybe second only into healthcare. It touches everyone. So we're just really thrilled to be able to be here. And the way that this will go, we'll give everybody a chance to introduce themselves. And then I'll be the timekeeper here. Our first roundtable will be E&L and cognitive theory. And then our second one will have Stacy Tatum and DJ Nicholson. They'll be leading the conversation around building capacity and equity. And then Dr. Amy and I will um, tie that up with teacher shortages and special education and kind of looking at systems. So this is really an opportunity for us to engage and to meet people who are from other places, to find these solutions to fix our system that isn't working for all kids. It's working for some, but it's not working for all. And we have a lot of students falling through the cracks. So I think if we can just set a couple norms, one is what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. I know I am recording this, so if there is anything that ends up where it's stated and we need to go in and cut that piece out before we put anything out there, I want to make sure that just let me know so I can find it in the thing and we can cut things out or not post the video at all. Um, I think we just need to assume positive intentions, that everyone here is speaking from the heart because they care, and nobody is intending to harm anyone else. So I think with those two norms of just feel free to be open and have honest conversations.
And Donna, before we move and we get them to introduce themselves, let's kind of talk a little bit on how we met and a little bit of what
Yeah.
we do, right? And I was an educator for more than 30 years in special education, and I was a specialist in reading mastery. But the most important thing on how Dr. Donna and I met, we were in Ireland. And we went to this big mastermind for leaders from around the world. And there was Donna, and we both had the same mission, same alignment, and we connected. And that's how we started these conversations on how do we connect with other leaders that are passionate about really impacting um, education and making a difference and closing gaps, like truly closing gaps.
Mhm.
And also talking about certain maybe careers or gaps in the future that we are probably not teaching or talking about, or careers that we're not even discussing. So we're kind of looking for those highly recognized experts that have these important topics that need to be addressed in the school systems. And we started with writing some books. So I'm going to let Donna talk a little more on what we're doing and how we're impacting um, school districts.
All right. Excuse me. So, yes, Angelica and I have a fairy tale meeting. Uh, we met in a castle in Northern Ireland, Crome Castle. So that's the exciting part about how we met. And then we got really nerdy. We got down to brass tacks. And we know that there's other people out there who are doing really hard work and really great work, but we can't all do it alone in our little silos. So we're really on this mission to bring people together so that we can move education forward together, because it's not working in the silos. There's It's just a huge system. Um, so we started writing collaborative books. We are a few of the people who are on here today are either going to be in our upcoming book or they were in past books that we have written. The first one was Ed Matadores, and then we wrote the second one was Educational Luminaries. And we're sticking with the Educational Luminaries theme for the main title, and then every book after this has a different subtitle. So that's where we're at right now. And we've also started bringing people in from people who um, have been authors of our books. We've been applying for RFPs. We are approved vendors in a few different places in Texas. And so as we get opportunities arise, and we're looking for those opportunities to be able to bring people in on work. And then the last thing that we're also doing is we've just launched it. We have a directory. So if you think Angie's List or Fiverr or Thumbtack, where you find all your service people to help you in your homes, we launched one just for education. So for school leaders can have a free account and go in and find consultants. They can interact with them. Consultants will have a space in there where they are able to post their profile, receive reviews, have conversations and connect with one another in a discussion board. So I'm really excited about that and all of the pieces that are going to be coming together. So I'm Donna Valese. I run Inspiring Leaders LLC, and I do mostly executive coaching and consulting around instructional leadership. So that is basically what I do, and then I have this partnership with Angelica. So I'm going to go ahead and go around my screen here. We'll have Amy Pleat Odell introduce herself.
Do you want to give me a time limit? Is it a 1 minute thing?
Yeah, just do like a 1 minute.
Okay. I started teaching in 1970, and I was really concerned about that kid in my class. There was no special ed law, and I was intrigued. And that theme has followed all the way through. I became a special ed teacher. I became a State Department specialist, a transition specialist, college professor. I said that, and now I'm a consultant, and I'm still, how are we going to meet the needs of that kid who was in my class that first year? And how am I going to help the teachers that really want to meet the needs of that kid? So that's kind of the theme of what runs through everything. My doctorate was in special ed systems change. And so I apply that in my consulting practice. I'm also a parent of two kids that have IEPs, so I'm really passionate about supporting families to be partners. That's me.
Perfect. Great. All right, Dr. Mary, you're up next.
Hello. Yeah, hello everyone again. I'm Dr. Mary from Hong Kong. At first I was in the actually like tertiary field, like working with university students for the like musical performances and stuff. So and then gradually I got lower and then I got into like the like kind of like secondary education and stuff, and then started to feel like, oh, I want to go even lower because I found that my impacts are getting more significant when the age is getting like younger and younger and younger, and then the feeling of fulfillment is getting like higher and higher when the age get lower and lower. So that's why at the end of the day, now I'm working with almost the youngest group, but not like the playgroup one, starting from 2.5 years old to 8 years old students. So basically, I would like to be the first teachers to teach them English. Yes. And then because it is always like the early intervention to find out the learning ability and then different kind of learning style at the early age is better to facilitate everything. So, and eventually I found that only myself is not enough. So I have to share my point of view with more people. So I start with I joined the place and I started to train teachers. Okay, and I started with like Open University training teachers over there, and then started to feel like, oh, they're actually lack of knowledge on, sometimes it's not like they don't want to do or their lack of ability, they are not provided relevant training. That's to like the traditional training like in Hong Kong probably mostly is like to tell you, oh, first like you have a chart. Okay, so 1 2 3 4 5, bingo 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 bingo, but the actual teaching is not like that. So basically I offer class demonstration. I teach in front of them like 20 teachers sitting around watching me teaching young kids and see the instant respond to the kids so that they can experience and they can actually know how to interact with young kids, and if they are of different abilities, how you handle them, and when it is a small group or it is a bigger group like that. Yes, this is mainly what I'm doing now.
Yeah, great. Great. All right, DJ Nicholson, you're up.
Hello, everyone. I'm DJ. I have been in education for the last 35 years, but I feel like it's been longer than that because growing up, I had a sibling with an IEP with multiple disabilities, and it was a lot for my folks. I'm going to piggyback on something Amy said about, in the early 1970s, there weren't a lot of supports. And so, I've been a coach and a trainer for the last 10, 11 years. And what I see out in schools is a lot of the same thing that was happening back in the 70s. It just looks and feels a little bit different. And so I help teachers and school leaders use an instructional model that really does shift that focus to being student-centered to meet the needs of every learner. So kids that have disabilities that are those neurodivergent thinkers can have their needs met in class and truly be engaged and focused in learning. So
Great.
that's what I do. And my business is called Inclusivology because I believe that every child can be included in learning with the right supports, and it's up to us to make it happen. We have to understand what inclusion looks like and feels like.
Absolutely. All right, Dr. Avis, I'm not going to try your last
Agumbiade.
name.
That's fine. My name is Avis Agumbiade. I'm also known as JC Sane, which is part of my business, madlysane.com. It is a mental wellness platform for it's like a social media where I have individuals that if they want someone to listen to them, I have volunteer listeners that will listen. I have workshops that people could use the platform to do their workshops on. The main reason I became interested in mental wellness is because I noticed that when I was working in the school system as an educational diagnostician, that the school psychologist and the educational diagnostician, they didn't get along well with each other. So I didn't, and I think mainly it's because of the competition. So I want them to come together, bring all this platform together and work with each other together to support the students. Another reason, another reason is because once I got out of the educational system, I noticed that students, once they're 18 years old or above, they really don't have a support system out there. So I wanted to give them that support system, and this platform will do that.
Fantastic.
I just
Good
want to
work.
say welcome, Dr. Avis.
Yeah.
I worked with her for many years in Fort Worth ISD when I was a director there. So I'm so glad you're here. Thank you.
Thank
Fantastic.
you.
All right, Stacy Tatum.
Hello, everyone. My name is Stacy Tatum, and my background is a little bit different. I have about 20 years in technology, and my passion is around equity in education and upskilling programs is where I started with adults in programs such as programs going into prisons, educating those that were low-level offenders coming out to help with recidivism and being able to actually come out and do what those type of programs are for, which is to have someone have go in and do their time and come out. But a lot of times those people would not get jobs. So I was in some very successful programs. Also, I am a parent of a neurodivergent kid, and I have done a lot of work within the schools as well, and working actively on some programs now with other leaders around the education in creating equity in the schools and education that is non-traditional, supplemental around areas of technology and education of both the parents and the kids so that the parents understand what the kids are exposed to. That I could talk about that a lot. I won't go down that rabbit hole, but it's just there's a lot of things happening with technology and if we start young, we get people set up early to be successful, and it creates that equity that we don't see. You see it as they get older, but it starts in the earlier school systems.
Don't worry about that. Don't worry about that. I mean,
Is that my
we're
theme
doing
music?
okay. Wow.
So dramatic.
Well, we do want to give Dr. Jaya a chance to introduce herself too. So if we'll make up time. We're at the beginning of this. We'll make up our time. Don't you worry. It
So,
sounded like Hunger Games music.
yeah,
Oh
grateful to
my.
be here.
All right, Dr. Jaya.
Thank you so much, Dana. Thank you, Dr. B. I'm not 100% well yet, but I'll try my best introduction. Unlike you all, I don't work with a very younger age or primary or secondary education system. I work with the college, universities, and our company organization called Global Talent Solution Hub is a nonprofit organization. We are connector for the universities, colleges to the business experts and expert industries. There are many graduates every year. It's out there and there's no job role, or even if there is a job role, it's not matching exactly what's in the university, the campus being taught. Nowadays, people are questioning, do we have to go for the traditional way of education? And that is a reason because there's a gap between the education and then when you're freshly graduate and you're going into the job role. Global Talent Solution, we connected these pieces and we go back to the university, we work with them. part of this, we also work with the entrepreneur incubator centers. We have our own where we allow these students not just go for the academic skills, but actually they can go for the business skills, entrepreneur skills as well. Not everyone meant for to follow the traditional job role from beginner to the end, but there are many aspiring youngsters who wants to start up their business and they don't know how to do it, or they just don't have that courage to follow the system. So that's what we help university to build the incubator center within in the campus, and we support them. We are based in UK, in London, but we work with the USA, a couple of universities, City University of New York. We work with the Virginia Wesley University, and we work with Akron as well. And in London itself, we have a 3, 4 university we work with. We work with India, different universities. Globally, all our plan is to make sure that there's a gap and the gap needs to filled in, whether it's education or the workplace. Another main reason what we do is allow, or you can say that empower our students. There are lots of financial aids available before even they go for the university, which they are not aware of. Scholarship, financial aids, even if they get some awards, which they can get some credit off. They are not fully aware, and there is lots of information which giving them confusion. So we work with the student on those areas as well. So yeah, thank you so much. Lovely to know all of you. I'm here in the background.
So happy to have you here. And it's so happy to see your beautiful face. I haven't seen you in ages. Ah,
I know. I am so happy you're here. Thank you so much, Jan. I'm really hoping you get better.
Thank you,
yes.
Dr. V. Thank you,
Mhm.
Donna.
So the way this is going to work, we'll have about 50 minutes for each round table, and it's really an opportunity to dive deep. We have 2 facilitators for each round. And so they'll do a little bit of an introduction, kind of framing the discussion, and then it's time to dig in and discuss. And hopefully by the end, we can figure out some things that we should start doing or stop doing or continue doing, recommendations, whatever that is. So I want to first we have Dr. Mary and Dr. B. They're going to be talking about our English language learners and cognitive theory and leading that part of the discussion. So I'm going to go ahead and set our timer here. I'm going to do like 58 minutes just to keep us somewhat on track. I'm sorry, not 58, 48.
48. Mhm.
Just to keep us on track and time. So, because we don't want to keep anybody longer than they need to.
Well, thank you. We're going to get started. And I'm so excited to be talking about this topic because as an English language learner, that was my struggle when I was growing up and going into school. And for so many years, I thought I had some type of learning disability, but it was really, really language. So the topic today is the Executive Roundtable Dialogue Framework around English language learners and cognitive science. And I want to introduce to you Mary, who's going to be helping me have these conversations. And she's from Hong Kong. So welcome, Mary.
Yeah, thank
Can
you
you put
very
us side by
much.
side there? Here. Thank you.
Yes, thank you. Okay, nice seeing you also. Then probably I will first start with like I'm not sure whether we can finish everything in 15 minutes. Yes, okay, but I'll try my best to move faster. Okay, so for like English learner learning English, so probably if you're a native speaker that you might not encountered same difficulties as like people who regard English as a second language. So we are seeing a pattern across districts, like regardless the size, demographics, or funding, the ELL students are over-identified, misidentified, or under supported. Okay, so and sometimes teachers are overwhelmed with strategies and platform and all those. So today I would like to share a little bit about the case in Hong Kong, and also actually it also applicable in Malaysia, because I use the same strategy in China and Singapore, and then we got to know that we do have some common problems, although we are not speaking the same language. In China we're speaking Mandarin, in Hong Kong we're speaking Cantonese, and in Singapore they've got Singaporean Mandarin and Singaporean Cantonese. So that, but we all share this similar issues over there. So that I have a little bit of the information to show all of you guys over here. So this is a little page that, yes, I have like created before. I'm not very good with the tag too as well. So you can see that. Okay, so basically non-native English speakers often learn from system, especially like in Hong Kong and Singapore, we prefer to employ a system directly from England, let's say Jolly Phonics, and then like Letterphonics from America. We've got like a lot of famous system all over the world. They're all working very well. However, when we are teaching as teacher, we do encounter a lot of issues. Okay, that is not about the system itself. It's not because the system itself is not specifically designed, or they haven't be inclusive enough. So first of all, the main issue is the assumed background knowledge. So those textbooks designed for native speakers often presume a background knowledge, okay, of culture especially. So I still remember there was a story, like when I first learned it as a teacher, I also find it so difficult to understand, okay, which is like talking about house. First of all, in Asian country, most of us live in flats. We don't have a house. And then there's a story about they're inviting a plumber to get into the place and then to fix something, and then to produce the sound of letter G, say g g g g g g g. And basically, after you tell the story, none of the student can identify with your feeling, and they do not understand what actually happens. And basically, the kids have to understand the story itself and the culture itself before they learn just the simpler actually thing, which is the g sound. So then this is one of the parts, okay? It is very interesting to me. And then that's why, like when we do teacher training, we try to do a little bit of things. That's why I rewrite the system accordingly as well. So to create my own phonics system. And the second one is the implicit grammar and structure. Native speakers usually acquire much of the grammatical knowledge unconsciously because they've got the environment, mommy, daddy talk to them in English. So mostly they're like correct, or like they naturally know those kind of like language patterns and stuff. But for us, we only talk in Cantonese or Mandarin or other languages. Okay, so we find a struggle to understand. Sometimes we need to have more support, maybe simply instructions, okay, to learn a language. And other than that, the last thing is like we are lack of like error correction. So it is why, it's because especially when I was like, now when there's like native speakers teaching English at the school, so most of the time, especially for very young learners, they might not they might not understand something, but they're not able to express. And at the same time, the native speaking teacher, they might not able to understand what are their problems and the difficulties they're encountering. But as a teacher who is speaking both languages, we actually understand, oh, what's the obstacle over there, and then we can try to do the correction and suggestions right away. So this is the first part of it that was hinder. Like that's why when we have a system, we have to make sure that how to make it inclusive, that we mentioned about before, the inclusive education. So they have these kind of difficulties, and that's why I implemented like inside my own system. And the next thing is breaking down English into isolated elements, because in our Asian country, we have a intention to try to like, okay, we learn reading and only reading. When we learn writing, only writing. When we learn sounds, is only sound. So when they are reading and they don't know what is the purpose, and then when they don't know the word, they just purely, okay, I know the phonics, and then I just keep reading and reading it, but they don't understand. At the end of the day, it affects the comprehension skill. They have to learn it separately, and then they do not understand the situation. So that's why at the end of the day, I have to develop a system to solve the problem. At what stage we should start learning? At what stage, okay, that we have assessment to identify them. So sorry about that. So let me stop sharing first. Yes, yes, and then these are the main things for now. It's like why these kind of problems are affecting and also increase the load, the cognitive load. That's what Dr. B is going to cover next. Okay, it's about. So these all things are increasing the load that we are. They have to process a lot more things that they should when they learn about something actually simpler than the original system. Yes, yes.
So some of the questions that we should be
Mm,
asking ourselves
mm,
is, because as a English language learner, I had the same problem. We were put in schools, and I know that mine has been
mm,
years, but as a director in special education, and also going into classrooms to kind of support teachers, I would see both, right? I would see the ELL and I would see the special ed students. I
mm,
would see students at risk. And it's really the overload of information that's given to them. But most importantly, it's the language. And many times, because they're having language issues, we are referring them to programs to be assessed. And Dr. Avis is here, and she will talk to you about it a little bit because as an educational diagnostician with that experience, we would have to assess kids to determine if they had a learning disability when it was
mm,
truly language-based concerns. So we're going to go ahead and open the conversations around ELL. What are some of the main concerns that you have and that you have observed as a leader in the school systems that are impacting ELL? First, we're going to go with what's not working, and then we'll move into what are some of the things that you've seen that are working for ELL, and then we'll move into the cognitive uh,
mm.
mode in a little bit. Anyone? Dr. Avis, since I kind of named you, and you know that as diagnosticians, we get a lot of students that are referred because of language. And yet, our administrators sometimes really want us to identify them as having learning difficulties.
Yes. And I did notice that when I was testing, especially when I used the Woodcock Johnson, the scores for the language learner would be 10 points lower than the scores generally should be. And so I would have to give them give them like a different test and also be concerned whether the language was a barrier. And most of the time it was. It was. And I would have to refer them to a bilingual assessor and they would take it from there. I would get all of the information that they needed and then they would do their assessment. So I
Mhm.
did notice that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We had a student at a high school I worked at, and she and another girl had come into the country from, like, I don't know, Venezuela or Colombia, or I can't remember what country. So they were Spanish speakers. They both came in at the same time. And after 3 years, the one student she was rocking it. She had English down pat. The other one was really still struggling with English, and struggling with all of her work. And so it was a night and day. And so we had our special educator really take a look at her because we weren't sure, like, how could this be? You have these two completely different learners. We sent our special education teacher off to be trained in the Wilson program, and she started assessing. And the difference we found between the two is the one girl, it wasn't a special ed problem, which we were wondering. It was that she didn't even know her letters and numbers in Spanish, let alone in English.
Hmm.
And she had never been taught any sort of phonemic awareness system in either language.
Mm-hmm.
And so once we started building the that connection for her, building that phonemic awareness, building the phonics pieces, and making sure that she was interacting more with her peers, then she started finally, after 3 years, making progress. But sitting in classes that are very heavily teacher directed was not helping her at all pick up the language because she was more of a shy person. The other girl who was flying, she was a social butterfly.
Mm-hmm.
And we know that those conversations are critical.
Yes, let me piggyback on that.
Yeah.
I noticed that when the child is in elementary, they have bilingual classes where, okay, the class is in Spanish, but they also blend in the English. Once they reach high school, that bilingual class goes away and you find more difficulties like that. So having the bilingual continue in the secondary would be fantastic.
Hmm.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I think a lot of our classrooms, from what I see, from what I know of our English language learners and how they learn English, and what I know of the majority of our classrooms, particularly from third grade up,
Mhm.
is that they learn we learn language by listening first, right? As an infant, and we're learning language, we're listening to everyone around us, we're picking up the language, we're picking up the pieces, and we're trying it out and getting that feedback. That social language develops first. When you compare that to particularly third grade and up, the majority of the class time is spent with the teacher in the front of the room talking and very little interaction. So they're not even able to talk and practice before they and if they can't talk and practice, they're not going to learn the academic language. And if they can't learn the academic language, they're never even going to get to be able to write it, right? Like put
Hmm.
it in writing. So
Absolutely.
our schools are not even our tier one instruction is not even set up for, let alone our special needs students or our differently abled students. It's not set up for ENL students either. So,
Hmm.
Absolutely.
So
Let me tell you
then
one
that
thing.
is
Go ahead.
yes, sorry about that. So is that because and talking about assessment, it is there's a big problem I can see from schools, and that's why like I think small schools like us are coming up to to cover the gap. It is just because for the big schools, so they have to have a certain like you have to set the there's a line that everyone has to meet that line so that you can promote to the next grade, meet another line, and you go to the next grade. But to be honest, in the reality, it doesn't work like that. So some kids
Hmm.
like maybe stuck somewhere at the early stage and then suddenly flies and somewhere again stuck somewhere. So you never know. Everyone has different difficulties that have to overcome their problems at different times. So that's why at my school, I do really think that like we have really small classes. It is like 3 to maximum 4 in a class. And to be honest, everyone has similar ability of learning. However, like it depends on the first initial assessment. And that assessment lasts for like an hour because we actually have to play with that kid for such a long time to see attention span, how they play, and then like when they learn, okay, they prefer visual element, they prefer action. I've got the kid, they can like this like at the age of 4, he can only spell if you do like YOU, and then he in his mind he has a YO and U, and then he spell you. Okay, if you tell him YOU, and then he say U, like this, like he can never remember. And some kid has to sing like like EIGHT 88888. Like they have to sing. They can't see the word, like they say sing, and then they look, oh, there's the letter over there, and then they can read. So everyone is a little bit different. So then at the end of the day, so that I would say the initial assessment done by, you know, a group of professional people is really important, because like there are a lot of assessments. However, different assessor has different, requirement towards the end, even though there's a chart to follow at the
Mhm,
end of the day.
mhm.
So then I do believe the people, like, because in our school only head teachers are doing assessment, and then they will discuss with the teacher closely before they assign classes. So, and then it's like there's like one person who's overlooked everything to make sure everything is, like like more accurate. It cannot be 100%, but at least it's not like that diverse.
Mhm.
Exactly. Yeah.
Go for it,
I,
Amy.
I'd like, yeah, this is really interesting conversation because this is not my specialty. But when I'm out working with a school and we're looking at inclusive methods and collaboration and collaborating with other specialists, often people say, what about the ELL specialist? But I have a question because we're looking at the lens of how do kids acquire language, looking at how we diagnose, but there's like this larger, what kind of mindset do we have when we're talking about equity? What mindset do we have about what these kids are capable of? I've noticed some of the districts I'm working with are not calling it ELL anymore. They're calling it MLL, multilingual learners, because
Mm.
it's focusing on this kid amazingly has multiple languages instead of it's a deficit that they're just learning. ELL, it's like, it's more of, I guess, more positive. And I've heard they're saying, oh no, we don't call it ELL, we call it MLL. And I'm thinking, okay, like we talk about how we're going to reframe what disability is. And then I think about the larger, like all of the social actions that are happening in the United States right now about immigrants. And like, I know we don't want to go there, but how much are teachers, like, I'm just picturing if I had a kid in my class who was learning English. And when I was on a national call recently, somebody was saying that she was a teacher and a third of her class are immigrants. And they're afraid to come to school because if their parents drop them off, maybe the parents won't be at home when they get there, and or ICE will capture them in the parking lot as they drop their kids off. So the kids are on Zoom. The kids that are now acquiring English are on Zoom while the teacher has the other two-thirds of the class in front of her. And I'm
Mm.
picturing, okay, if we're going to design a system that works, how do you, oh my gosh, how do you, I'm hearing the things you're talking about, what you need to think about if you're really going to help those kids acquire English. Yet, if I'm a teacher and I've some of these kids included in my class, like this is not a simple solution, a simple problem to solve. So I wanted to like hear if you have any wisdom that people ask me that this is not my thing, like what should we do about this situation? And so I'm really hoping I get some tidbits here.
Well, you know what, Amy? Like, I truly believe that one of the main issues or problems is that we're not distinguishing language acquisition needs versus learning difficulties. So, in many districts, the honest answer is that when we're looking for signals, like when students are having a difficult time, it's not always clear and consistent or aligned across campuses as to what to look for. But what they look for, these are some of the things that they're looking on. They're often looking at performance-based indicators. For example, low reading scores, slow processing, limited verbal responses, or the student hasn't completed the work, right? They're looking at those indicators and then they're saying, okay, they have a learning disability, and I'm talking about that because we're going into cognitive deficits as well. So the challenge with these behaviors that they're looking at is acquiring new language. They're experiencing cognitive overload, and they're demonstrating learning difficulties. That's what they're going to tend to say. But without intentional systems looking for patterns over time, not isolated data points, like I just mentioned, I think that what some of the things that we need to do is ask, is the student making progress when language demand is reduced? I mean, we have to look at that. Does the performance improve with linguistic scaffolds, but not with repeated intervention? Is difficulty consistent? Is it consistent across languages, settings, and content areas? I mean, we have to look at those questions. And the most reliable signals to include would be growth data across time rather than a single assessment. Classroom observation focused on access to instruction, not just output, you know. And then response to linguistically appropriate tier instruction, which I don't think that really happens in RTI. And then being able to the comparisons of performance when tasks are language heavy versus concept focused,
Mhm.
you know.
Yeah. I'm reminded of my first year teaching under an official contract. Um, Years and years ago, I was teaching second grade, and I had a student who came in. He was a Spanish speaker. He did not read or write in Spanish yet. He was very young. But he also didn't speak a lick of English, and he didn't read or write in English. And by the end of the year, he was pulled out 2 or 3 times a week with the English language specialist. And um, at the end of the year, this kid was reading and writing in English at the end of a first grade level. So now we're at the end of second grade. He went from nothing, like infancy, no English at all, to all of a sudden he's almost to grade level. So he grew more than a year, almost to at least, 2 years or more. Um, and I had a conversation with the specialist, and I said, I thanked him so much. I was like, thank you so much for everything you did. He's like, I only spent 2 or 3 hours a week with him. You did all the work. And I'm like, but I haven't been trained in this. Like, what could I possibly be doing? He goes, the way that you teach, you are always having them discuss things. You have visuals all over your classroom with the language written. You have a language and visual rich classroom, and you have resources to support, and you're buddying him up with kids all the time, so that he has that support as well. So that taught me, and as I've learned over the years and have had other English language learners and have learned more about cognitive science and all of that, there are so many small moves that are good for all kids that we want to see in all classrooms that we're not seeing right now. Um, there's so many things that you can do at tier one, like a turn and talk, like posting visual walls. So when I think of the situation of having um, kids on Zoom who aren't native speakers trying to learn, I would be trying to support that teacher to figure out how to get the visuals and that discussion in, because they will do so much for a student. And I wish we had Dr. Louise DePresenti on, she does a lot of cognitive science work, but her specialty is how drawing is the eighth. She calls drawing the eighth literacy. And it's not just about the visual piece, but it's actually about the fine motor piece of when you're learning a concept and you're drawing that concept, it implants it in your brain, right? And so I think there's still so many more things that that we could be doing that are small. They're literally small moves. It's not totally reworking how we teach. It's small moves in between in increments every 10 minutes or every 15 minutes where we make sure that kids are engaging. It's all good teaching stuff, right? And so I think just I don't
And
know.
it's the integration of language and content objectives,
Yeah.
because when you don't integrate it, like, and I'm going to give you an example as a English language learner, because I'm Mexicana, right? So speaking Spanish in a home where they was just speaking Spanish, pure Spanish, and then going to a monolingual classroom where they just spoke English, when they were teaching content, I had to process the language in Spanish to kind of figure out what are they saying. So as I'm processing what they're saying in my language and then kind of trying to understand the content, I would get completely lost because by the time you knew it, the cognitive overload, they were moving to the next thing. And then I was still trying to process the first concept or the first instruction they said. So I was completely lost. And I think that I lost so many years and I struggled. And that's why I studied and got my doctorates in and to try to understand human development and learning theories because I wondered like, why is that student learning and he's learning and she's learning and I'm completely lost and I'm so behind. But now I understand it's because of the content, the cognitive overload, and them not integrating the objective of language and content. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah.
Anybody else want to kind of pitch in? Because I know Donna, Mary, and me are just talking, talking. We have 19 minutes. Come on, ladies. Anything else? Because we can talk forever on this topic.
Okay, let me touch base with the Zoom. Zoom is a visual platform, and language learners, they learn visually. So you can use slides with pictures. You can use icons instead of text.
Oh,
You can hold up the real objects, and you use the drawing tools that they have on the Zoom. So Zoom, it can be a virtual whiteboard for the
Mhm.
teacher.
Mhm. And
yeah.
do you know that some of the schools are actually moving into virtual instruction?
Mm.
I was in Laredo, Texas, and some of the high schools are going to be doing that. So I was impressed, and I'm very supportive of that because not everybody is into the traditional schooling.
Yeah, we had the school district I worked at last. You're making me remember this, Dr. Avis. Um, our two high school math teachers were out of this world. Like their math scores on when the students went and took the Regents exams, their Regents pass rates were in like the 95% and above typically. And that's almost unheard of anywhere else in the state, right? It's like the average pass rates are in like the 60s, right? And here they are constantly getting the 98%. One of the things that they do when they are teaching, and it's not that they have students on Zoom, but it's kind of a similar thing. So they actually use, I think it was Office 365's notebook software, and every day had a page, and they actually recorded themselves teaching and their whiteboard because we had Promethean boards. So they were doing all of their notes and stuff. And they would have a tablet in front of them where they were literally writing the notes and doing the problems and everything right from the tablet up on the board. And it was recording everything. And then at the end of the day, they would pass, they would post their lessons so students, if they missed the lesson or students who were still struggling through their homework, they could go back and rewatch things. So I think like that, making it visual, Dr. Avis, like we have the technology to do it. It's taking the time to harness it in a positive way. Um, and they were also really good at engaging kids in the discussion and stuff, which also isn't always seen in math class. But they had the visuals, they had the discussion and all of that. They had all of those pieces along with the ability for students to go back and review everything. Um, so I think it takes time for teachers to learn these new ways, but it's doable. So I see
It
Dr.
also
J has
works
got
for
her
young
hand up.
people too.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like even the
Absolutely.
young kids, because in my school, like because of course, like parents are worried about their watching, cartoons, flashing things, and then the affect their concentration span. But if you use it wisely, then it's actually really working. So what
Yeah.
I'm doing now is actually every single lesson, when the part I really want to reinforce, I take little videos of the kids doing it, okay, with like a few of my instructions, and then I upload it to Google Drive. So every single kid has their own Google Drive. So their revision material is not like I have to repeat the same paper like working at home anymore. It's like just have like because in Hong Kong everyone has a helper. Okay, they have the helper just play themselves. Okay, then they're enjoying watching themselves doing. So it's this kind of revision instead of like the boring types of revision.
Yeah. Dr. J has got her hand up.
Yeah. Well, there was a very interesting conversation going, and I'm not sure because I haven't worked with that age group what you guys are talking about. But certainly, me being English is having a third language for me, and coming to UK, I can share my experience. And when I work with the universities, and when they talk about that, how immigrant student or international student actually doing well, but only if the English level is higher than 5.5 band in IELTS. And that when they are not, how the university does is they understand the international student or somebody whose language, English language, is not the first language. They have their own way of learning because they cannot just completely learn as fast as your language English person. So recording, yes, that helps. The university do give lots of assignments and hands out. They have a system developed, and thanks to COVID, after that, every universities and college and even a school level here in UK have their own system where they throw the assignments, even the lesson is done, still they upload those presentation slides and stuff on the Google Classroom they call on that, and that's where the student pick up, and when they go back and their own pace they actually learn thanks to YouTube AI. The students are going back to see the videos and pause and then understand in the slow steady measure way. So I guess in education system have definitely adapt being flexible to adapt this multi-languages or you can say bilingual kids. But again, with the Dr. B mentioned it, that what if the student has a learning difficulty in same time and you are a multilinguist or you are a bilinguist? That's where the issue comes, and that's where I think schools and universities are getting difficult to identify um, how do we deal with when there is person who language is not the first language and they have ADHD or they have some difficulty in learning. That's where the problem comes in, kicks in, and that's where I think university college needs to still or school needs to work it out. Otherwise, I can see that it's a way 23 years ago when I came to UK, and now system has drastically changed a lot. So yeah.
Thank you. Dr. Amy's hands up.
Yeah, I love playing with these little reaction things. Um, so what you just talked about, Jana, just is a great illustration of you can provide the support, and if the student wants to take advantage and be a self-directed learner, they can they'll go with it. if they are a self-directed learner and they're blocked and the barriers are there, like they're just going to be frustrated and behavior problems and all the rest of it. And that's true from infancy all the way up. What I'm concerned about is how much, like Donna, when you were describing the two students and one really excelled and one didn't, and one had some challenges, I wonder how much another factor was a drive to overcome this. Because, we all have had those students that have just like, I'm the passive learner. I can't everybody thinks I'm stupid or whatever word they use. And no matter how much you put it out there, if they think there's no point and they'd rather be the bad kid than the dumb kid, then no matter what you do, it's not working. So what can we do maybe at the age that Mary you're working with, starting from the little ones to what's most valuable, that growth mindset, most valuable is that you keep going and persisting. My grandson, watching him learn to walk, nobody gave him a grade every time he fell down. Oh, you got a C- on that attempt to walk. No, everybody's like cheering, yes, you could do it. Yes, you could do it. Yes, you could do it. He stands for 15 seconds and he's not holding on. And everybody's like, yay, it's so exciting. And then he just believes I can. And this group of adults around me believe I can. But when we get in school, especially when we start giving grades and kids go, oh, I got a B on that, or I got a D on that. And like, why should I try? I can think of kids when I was their transition coordinator and we're going to go out for a job interview and you're going to have to talk to this employer about what you can, why you can do this job. And kids, so many of them said to me, should I tell them that I'm stupid and I don't do well in school? And I go, wait, where's this coming from? And he goes, well, I don't understand. And I go, do you know you have a learning language processing disability? It's a learning disability. And it means that if it's all auditory, I explain what it says in his confidential folder. And he says, how come nobody ever told me? How come, like, here I am, a high school junior or senior, and I just thought I was dumb. And those nice special ed teachers are going to help poor little me. I mean, he didn't use that language, but where are we actually crippling kids by allowing them to believe they can't? And how do we keep the switch turned on that they can learn? And we'll provide, if this method isn't working, advocate for something else for yourself. Let's find what works because you want to learn the way my grandson wanted to learn to walk. What if every kid in class was like that? And I'll take a leap and say, what if every teacher wanted to learn to teach with that kind of a passion and wanted to go, okay, I'm struggling with this kid. Like I told you about that kid when I was a beginning teacher that I didn't want to give up on. I went to my department chair. What did I know? I was 21. I didn't know. And he said, look, some kids just won't learn. Go on and teach the rest. In 1970, that was a standard thing. I was remarkable that I wasn't going to give up on him. And now, are there teachers that still believe that? Are there, there's some kids, I'm just going to have to teach the ones that can learn, and then the rest will have to do the best they can. Well, how do we shift this whole mindset? So I've given a bunch more, but anyway, there you go. Let's see what you.
You said that word advocacy. That is exactly what the student needs, is how to advocate for themselves. And then they need to be given choices. They need to know how to build up their confidence. And that confidence is the drive.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I also think our system has overloaded teachers. You've got to do this and you've got to do this paperwork and we've got to do it this way and we've got to do this. And we keep adding more and more things. So I truly, to my core, believe there are not many teachers out there who don't want to help change kids' lives. Like I feel like most educators have gotten in there. I haven't met a single one that came in and says every day, I just want to screw a kid's life up. Like that's not why we're here. We are here to help kids. And but I think that our system and what we're expecting of teachers has really changed with all the standards and the standardized testing, and you got to get these kids to pass the tests, and then you have to do all these things, and it's do more with less all the time. And so I think our system has really made it difficult for teachers to really be able to or feel like they have the ability or the permission to go off and provide this extra support to this student. So I think, are there some teachers out there who've kind of thrown their hands up and said, well, it doesn't matter what I do. I keep trying these things, it's not working. Sure, there are some who've probably just kind of they're coming in day after day for the paycheck, just trying to do what they can do to try to feel some level of success. But I think if we were to take a few steps back and reorganize what we're expecting, because we know there are schools out there doing it. There are schools out there who are rocking it, but there's not very many of them.
That's right.
Right.
And the system is setting the teachers up to burn out. And that's why it's very hard to retain the teachers because they burn out, and they burn out because they really do care and
Yeah.
they need that support.
Yeah.
They also need the emotional support.
Absolutely. And we're going to go into burnout in a little bit. So
Yeah, we are.
I just
But
want, DJ, we have a few minutes if you want to say, and then Mary and I are going to be closing.
Yeah,
And so why
I just wanted to piggyback on what Dr. Ava said about the idea of kids being their own advocate and asking for what it is that they need. Before we even have them do that, we have to give them opportunities to be engaged in their own learning. It goes back to what Donna said at the beginning of this conversation that, once we get after third grade, teachers are standing up in the front of the room and they're doing the lecturing, they're doing all the talking. If they're doing all the talking, then they're also doing all the learning. And you've got kids that are just tuning out. I'm
Mhm.
building an entire platform for teachers based on this exact same thing because kids don't know what to advocate for if they're not put in situations where they're actively learning. They don't know to say, hey, you know what, I could really use a graphic organizer when I'm doing this. Or, I really need some visuals to kind of sketch out the sequence of what we're talking about. They don't even know to ask for that because they don't know that that's even a possibility yet. Because all they're sitting and they're getting. And that is absolutely one of the biggest shifts we have to make in education. And that's what Stacy and I are going to chat about in the next roundtable.
Yes, I love it. I love it. Mary.
Yes, so why we have to address this like differently? We actually cannot fix ELL outcomes by adding more interventions, layering on more professional development, or placing even more burden solely on teachers. So we can actually fix it by redesigning how system works together. Instruction, language development, cognitive assessment, leadership, decision making, and this is what the conversation is about.
Yeah, I mean, this conversation was so juicy. We could keep going and going, but honestly, we're going to continue having these roundtables and we'll continue on some of these topics that are really important. But ELL or MLL challenges are not student problems. We need to walk away with that. They are system design challenges. When language development, instruction, cognitive demands are misaligned, students experience the overload. Teachers feel overwhelmed and outcomes stall. The solution is not more programs like we talked about. It's clear, more coherent systems that reduce cognitive load and support learning by design. So, as leaders, our work is to simplify, align, and intentionally design systems that work with how students learn, not against it. Um, in fact, we're going to continue on flipping the script with these conversations, and I am going to, I think we have 2 minutes. Oh my goodness, I was kind of rushing through the whole thing, but anything else, Mary, before we close?
Yeah, actually, if we have to carry on the topic, I think it will be forever. So, but I do hear like in different kind of like no matter what level of learning, they have to be in an inclusive environment. And what I'm doing now is something really interesting, like those, try to group students into different, like grades and stuff. So in my place, that's something very interesting. I'm not sure whether you agree with it. It is like I've got after the assessment, we are not placing the kids with similar characters together. I'm trying to put those outspoken ones with one or two like quieter ones, and then we encourage them to talk together. And one thing very important, we have to educate the parents because it takes a while for me to let the parents understand I have a noisy classroom. That's why they can learn talking in English instead of like listening to English only. Yes, that's
Exactly. Yeah, so I guess what we need to do, I think what districts must stop doing in the name of supporting the MLL or the ELL students is they must stop confusing activity with impact. Many practices look supportive on paper, but in reality, they keep increasing cognitive load, fragment instruction, and dilute learning. So we need to stop the isolating language development from the core instruction by pulling them out. Like I really feel that that can hinder the child because they're going to fall behind more and more when you keep pulling them aside. So again, this is a juicy topic, and we're going to continue talking more in some other roundtables that we're going to have. And thank you, thank you, thank you so much, Mary, and everybody for these beautiful conversations we had today.
I am loving this. Like I was so excited to nerd out with everyone today, and I think I might even be more excited now than I was before, even though we're uncovering all of the things that we know are challenges in our system. But as Angelica said, they're systems problems, and the adults running schools are they are the people who have to own the solutions, not our students. So I love that point. Well, next up we're going to talk about building capacity and equity with Stacy and DJ. Are you ready?
We are
Yay!
All
ready.
right.
Yeah.
Woo!
I love the energy in this room. It's fantastic.
I have chills right now. All right, starting the timer. Go for it.
All right, so we're going to jump in and talk about building capacity for educators and then ensuring equity for students when teachers are given the right supports in order to meet the needs of all the students that they have in their classroom. So the first question that we wanted to address was, what are districts getting wrong? And so I'll go ahead and address that question. We can talk about that for a bit. Stacy also has another question that she's going to pose to the group. And so one of the things that I've noticed that districts are getting wrong when it comes to building capacity is they're hiring teachers that may or may not be qualified, that might be coming in from a different district where they were not successful, or another school within the district that they're currently in where they were not being successful. And so school leaders, district leaders are happy to have a teacher in the classroom. They're happy to have someone at the front of the class just to be the teacher, which is great on paper. I've seen that a lot in the various districts that I've worked in, both public and private. That there's something to be said for, we have a certified teacher in every classroom. The problem with that thinking is that school leaders aren't supporting the teachers that they have in those positions. And so I'll just say a couple things and then I'll open up the floor. One of the things that I've seen is when a school district or a school has access to instructional coaches, that coaches can be used in a very punitive way. They're putting out fires. They're doing evaluations and observations for kids with disabilities in order to move them to a more restrictive environment. They're reporting back to administrators that such and such a thing is happening in somebody's classroom. And so what I've seen, and this is based on my experience as an instructional coach, that even if districts and schools have access to a coach, even for a very short amount of time, maybe they're in school one day a month, that they're not being used in a way that is being supportive of teachers. Instructional coaches are designed to be supportive for teachers. And so if we can't support teachers and build their capacity, build them up as leaders, as facilitators in their classroom, there's really no way that those teachers that are struggling, that don't have the background they need, that don't understand different instructional models and different resources that they can use in order to support, different thinkers, unique learners, all of those, all the things that we call kids that just think a little bit differently outside the box. If we can't support that, then there's no way that those teachers can ensure the equity of kids in their classroom. Thoughts?
I'm gonna chime in here just on the instructional coaching piece, because exactly what you described, I have seen in multiple districts. We have an instructional coach. They have a flexible schedule. So we're going to call them, they're going to sub at this for this class, and then they're going to run this meeting for me, and they're going to run all of my common planning time meetings and train teachers, and they're going to get pulled for weeks at a time so that we can do the diagnostic testing with students every 3 times a year. And we're going to have them do hall duty here because we're short a person. And so they end up being this administrative person, but that's not their superpower. Their superpower is in working one-on-one with teachers to look at what's happening in the classroom, to look at the outcomes that are happening, and then design instruction around that with support. And so we're not using them to the capacity. And we also very infrequently will you find a district who provides support for their instructional coaches, who provide that space like we have right here. So, or like teachers have their common planning time so that they can collaborate. We very rarely give that time to coaches so they can collaborate with each other and solve each other's problems, and come together. Um, so the power is there, and harnessing it really well goes right back to the systems.
Right. And I have a lot of ideas on how we can harness the power of instructional coaches, even if the school doesn't have access to instructional coaching, every week or even every month. There are ways to use coaches in a way that's really effective, where they can really show off their superpower. The challenge with the way so many districts use their instructional coaches, like Donna, you just explained all the things that I experienced over the course of just a couple years. I mean, I had some wonderful experiences with coaching, but then I had experiences like Donna, where here's an example, I was woven into a teacher's improvement plan. So, this was a teacher that had significant deficiencies in some areas, and my name was written right into the report, that DJ is going to come out, and instructional staff developer, she's going to come out, she's going to train the teacher. And so there was no opportunity to build relationship, build rapport, get to know her as a human before I got to go in and work with her. And so our first interaction, she looked at me and she's like, I'm not doing this. I'm not doing this with you. I can't have another administrator in my room. And I said, but I'm not an administrator. And so then in having those kind of situations with teachers, then the trust is, you don't even have an opportunity to build trust with teachers. And so if we can't build trust and connection as humans first, and then within the classroom so they can effectively work with their kids, there's no way that we can build capacity. And I think that's a big reason why we lose so many teachers. And I know, Dr. Donna is going to talk about this later when she talks about, teacher shortages. We are not, as a system, we are not doing what we need to do to support teachers and invite them to stay and love what they do. I mean, I started teaching in 1995, and boy, I couldn't believe how happy and lucky I was to be a teacher. And I felt like that for decades. I mean, just like, this is the best thing ever. I'm going to retire in this little classroom that I'm in with my kids, and it's great. But there was a shift. There was a shift about maybe 12 years ago. There was a shift, and I can't put my finger on exactly what it was, but we're having trouble keeping teachers and keeping them happy in the classroom.
Yeah. And another problem that I see with the instructional coaches is that they do a lot of training at the campus level, but they don't do the follow-up.
Right.
They also don't do the modeling. Like when we did the inclusion implementation, we hired Stetson, but I was very involved in the training. We would go and do the training. We did follow-ups, and then we did the modeling of how would the instruction look like, right? So it's also building the capacity as when we deliver the professional development and not just giving them more and more things to remember and do, but being able to align it with the instructional framework and then being able to follow up and really like very heavily working, especially because we do have some weak teachers. We have to kind of agree on that. How do we build them up instead of writing them up all the time? How do we build them up? And I think one of the ways would be train, follow up, be in the classroom, model, and show. It's like the mirror, like I do, you do, I do, you do, and then being able to build them instead of writing them up and asking them to leave,
Yeah. Those
because
are great activities.
Well,
But they need to build the relationship first, the coach.
right.
They have to listen more than they talk, ask questions instead of giving orders, and validate the feelings of the teacher. Start out with the teacher strengths. Ask the teacher, what are your strengths? What are your weaknesses? And go for there. Work with the teacher, and it shouldn't be because of compliance.
Yes.
Right.
And
I'd like
and
to
I think that also goes to the training of the instructional coaches. A lot of districts just say, you're a great teacher, so we need you to be the instructional coach for everybody, but we're not going to send you to training or anything to learn how to coach. Like
Right.
there are actual coaching skills that and strategies that you can learn through training and through practice that teach you, how do I build the relationship? When I am stuck in a situation where the administrator wants me to work with someone, how do I navigate that so that I still can build the rapport with them? How can I? And so it really comes down to like those things can be done, but the system has to support it. I think I cut you off, Amy. I'm sorry.
Well, we were about to say the same message. I
Great
I
mind.
would first of all that I was hired as the inclusion coach, and then I built the capacity of the local coaches. And if the principal said, I want you to work with the problem teachers, then I encountered the same thing that you've described, and and then when I worked with the coaches, I said, what do you understand the difference between teaching and coaching and mentoring and, all of the different roles? And sometimes you might need to be a mentor. You might need to show them what it might look like. But, what's the difference between teaching somebody, mentoring, and coaching? And evaluating, or do you have an evaluation role? So I created a whole package for inclusion coaches to support them, but that needs to be within a bigger system. So if you have professional development, say you have a one-day workshop, or you have some other form of professional development, if teachers are sent to the PD and the principal doesn't say, here's why we're doing this, here's what I'm going to expect will change. So we're going to embrace inclusion, and every teacher needs to know instructional strategies because every kid is different. Some of them are MLL, some of them have IEPs, some of them are homeless, some of them didn't sleep, some of them, their parents just whatever, died from COVID, whatever. Every kid is variable, and every teacher needs to be able to address variability. Here's what the purpose of this is. And then we're going to have the coach working with you. We want everybody to experiment. You won't do it perfectly the first time. Don't worry about it if it's not perfect the first time you try it. We're going to share lessons learned from each other and build this collective efficacy and this growth mindset across the whole faculty. When you've got a principal setting that tone, and then you have a coach who understands what his or her role is, and you have teachers that say, okay, first of all, my principal says we're going there. Second of all, I see a reason and I want to go there too. Then you've got the teacher owning the learning and experimenting on their own and sharing with other people, and not, oh, you're such a goody goody, are you going to use that PD? Like the whole climate has to shift. And if you get that ecosystem, I love that these are all systems thinkers here on the screen. So how do you get all the pieces lined up? So, because just having a good coach is not going to do it if the other pieces aren't there.
Well, I want to piggyback on something that Dr. Amy and Dr. B both said about, the follow-up that's necessary with coaching and with PD. But I want to take that a step further and say that if we're going to talk about professional development, then professional development also needs to be differentiated like we would differentiate instruction for kids. So to just say to, like there's always that, beginning of the school year, PD day, and there's another PD day in the spring. If we're always training the teachers on exactly the same topic. I know, when I worked for a public district, we trained on inclusive scheduling and specially designed instruction. And I would have teachers texting me as a trainer, texting me saying, I can't believe that we have to do this again. And all I could say was, I'm sorry, I don't have control over this, but we have to give teachers professional development in areas and go deeper so they can actually grow their craft. Mm-hmm. And go deeper in their own knowledge, so then that makes that shift in the classroom. And Dr. B, just as a last note, I know Stacy has her hand up. A really good coaching cycle should look like a good instructional cycle. So you're modeling, you're supporting, and you're releasing. They should look the same. So
absolutely.
Stacy, you got your hand up.
I do. I didn't want to cut anyone off, but I love this conversation, and I want to pivot to another part of something that hasn't really been touched on, which is parents, and the effect of parents on teachers. And I was very involved in the schools and being part of a parent advocate. And when we talk about equity too, not all the parents are going to be involved in the same way, but also in terms of how that message is and the way that parents can interact I know a couple of districts doing it really, really well in terms of how they communicate and understanding that not all the parents will be able to come to an in-person meeting or have the different types of supplemental trainings that they have. But if there's different ways for parents to understand how they can support the kids and the teachers, that kind of education, I think, is just as important because when that isn't done, then you see the teachers that have been bombarded by parents who don't understand why a teacher is teaching in a certain way. And if they know how to support their child, now not we do have, we had homeless kids, right? We have kids that have absentee parents. We have all that. We also had parents who didn't speak English. And we had a very large uh, percentage of those parents that didn't understand what their kids were doing because we didn't take that into consideration. And there's ways to do that, and it doesn't have to be expensive. That was always the argument. Well, it's too expensive to put out, information, but to at least acknowledge that and let people. Now, it's not something that you will find out if you don't do proactive things. I ran the talent show for the school for a couple years. I had a kid show up on the night of the talent show who had not had no interaction from the parent. And normally I'd say you can't do it. What I found out was that the parent didn't understand that the kid was supposed to be in the talent show. And so, because the parent didn't speak English. And so they were so upset that the kid might not be able to be there because he didn't show up to the meetings. And then I understood the situation, and it was one of those things where the kid ended up being a prodigy and played the violin like he was in some sort of, but it's like that's an extracurricular, but the same thing could be true of a lot of different things. And so I think that's really important, because that can be a real strain. And I saw it with the teachers that were able to navigate that parental, and that could be part of coaching as well, dealing with parents. Because I'm telling you, like when I would get in a room with the teachers, that was up there with, teaching to various kids, was also working with different parents and the different challenges around that. So I think that part, I mean, that is a big piece as well, and that's why the teachers that have been teaching for so long had that advantage of, being able to figure that out. But I think that's something that those that don't, they can really have that take them over.
I think that's a great conversation on the equitable parent interaction piece, because a lot of the things that I've seen as a leader in the educational system is that a lot of times when decisions were made, parents were immediately told the changes that were going to be made instead of having the parents being involved in the decision making, instead of kind of figuring out, okay, how, learning more of what the student likes at home and then seeing how can we integrate those pieces in the school system to help better understand the child and being able to develop maybe even awards or systems for them in the school level. And the other piece that I see is the communication, right?
Hmm.
I think that because we do have homeless, we have many types of home situations. I think that communication should be in text, voice, video, paper, not just paper format or emails. And then you're doing the hit and miss, right? Some of these parents don't even have a computer to be reading the emails because they're homeless, like you said. So being able to work around the interaction, how do we interact with parents so that we can really get to the heart of things and work together?
I'm gonna,
Absolutely.
I want to just take on all of this, go up to the balcony and really look at our system. So there's a great there's this concept out there, and there's many articles about it, about leading from the dance floor where everything's right in front of you, but you can't see, you get that tunnel vision, you can't see across the room, and leading from the balcony where you see the whole system, everything that's going on. The band's over here, everybody's on the dance floor over here, there's people talking over here, there's people at the bar, you can see the whole thing. So going to the balcony, or maybe the higher, even higher up balcony, goes back to, so the people leading the systems here, and this is one of those areas where I see a lack of training um, in conceptual understanding in a lot of the, not all, but a lot of the leaders, is that one, they don't understand coaching systems and how to really design their system to make instructional coaching powerful. That's number one. So they don't understand the difference between coaching, consulting, mentoring, and supervision, right? Those are all very different things. And from the family engagement piece, they probably grew up thinking family engagement means like we're going to get parents into the school for parent night and parent teacher conferences. But parent engagement is true parent engagement is far beyond that. And it's exactly what you were talking about, Stacy, of like educating parents and and how like what you were talking about, like making sure that we're able to communicate with all sorts of parents. Um, and helping them understand how to better support their child, when they know their child even better than we do. So there's this I think there's a general either a lack of understanding, or we go on the assumptions that everything's just like it was when I went through school and how I experienced school. But we can't keep operating that way. We've got to go up to the balcony. We've got to shift some of these systems and help principals and superintendents and assistant superintendents problem solve around these. So that's my 2 cents. Maybe.
I want to just add on to what you were talking about about parent engagement. So I just got stuck on that word engagement. So I think a really good question to pose to district and school leaders is, when you use the word engagement, what does that mean? What does it mean? What does it look like for parents to truly be engaged? Because Dr. B, when you listed out all the different ways that parents could understand something, that's just best practices for accessibility, making knowledge accessible for everyone. Well, that's the same thing in the classroom when we're talking about student engagement. Students are engaged when they're actively learning, not when the teacher is teaching, when they're actively learning and engaged in their learning. So, I mean, maybe some of these conversations need to be shifted and to where we're using the word engagement. How are students being engaged? Are they sitting there with their hoods up and playing on their phones and playing in their desks or wandering around the classroom? Those are kids that aren't engaged, and they don't, we talked about advocacy before. If kids don't know how they can engage in learning or what works best for them, they're going to check out, and they do check out. And I feel like the more we see kids behaving differently, engaging in social media, having shorter attention spans, being very visually stimulated by their phones and their iPads all the time. We have to shift what we're doing in the classroom, and that like Dr. Donna said, like that starts when you're looking at it from the balcony and you're looking down and you're seeing what's happening. Because honestly, like if I'm the dancer on the dance floor and you can only see me, that's not good. You know what I mean? Like we have to be able to see number one, what's working, because there are things that are working, and I know Stacy's going to touch on that. Like there are things that are working, but how do we shift the conversations to get down to the brass tacks of how do we help teachers feel supported? How do we get kids engaged in learning?
Yeah.
Mary?
Yes, and it's just like because just now Dr. Donna was mentioning about overlooking like the whole system, that situation, and then I recall what I'm doing now at the university level. It is because like like a lot of teachers, like our future teachers, they graduate from early childhood education, and then but you if you look into the curriculum, what they are learning, they actually they are not learning anything that you talked about. They are learning about just theory of like cognitive development. They only learn the theory. They don't know how to actually handle the kids. And then at the end of the day, they have maybe not even met more than 10 kids in their life, and they're going to teach. So they don't have real life, practice. It's not like medical field. They have to go for, like 6 months training with in the hospital. They don't have these kind of services during the course, like when they're learning to be a teacher. So um I as what everyone said about, it's not about the teachers. Like teachers, if you would choose to be a teacher, probably you love kids and you don't want the kids to fail, but at the end of the day you apply for the courses and you're not educated to do those things. Because actually I learned how to teach by teaching for 20 years, and eventually now I still can just tell you that I can teach, but still there are some deficiency. I'm still learning. It's something like lifetime learning. So I'm just I'm just waiting, because this is what my like dream actually. So I'm actively I try to communicate with schools at university level in Hong Kong at least, that so can you change a little bit of the curriculum? Okay, can you implement something maybe more real life scenario that they can experience how to talk to parents, or they see people how they talk to parents, or else they can't like I was like trained to talk to kids, that I only talk to kids, and just recently in this past 5 years I start talking to adults. So it is actually very difficult, because I can communicate with kids does not mean that I can communicate with a parent. It's totally different skills. So yeah, I'm waiting for the time that the system they can include like more variety of training instead of just knowledge, just theory.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And,
I love
and
it.
I'm going to put a
Mhm.
quick little plug here. So, one of our authors from our last book, Sylvia Bodwy, she lives up in Canada. She started a school. Well, we have started also another partnership, and it's called EPIC, Educator Pathways for Innovation and Change. And our ultimate goal is to provide alternative certification programs, alternative pathways to certification for teachers and leaders that includes all of these types of things that we're talking about that that people are not getting in their programs. And so I'm just going to throw this out there as an invite of anyone who's interested in providing some of those courses. I know I've talked to a couple of you about that. We are in the process right now of building the platform and building courses. Once we have courses built and we're offering courses and we have that proof of concept, it'll move to then putting some of those courses together to create certificate programs. When we have that proof of concept, then we can start to apply to states to provide an actual alternative path
Mhm.
for teaching and leading. So feel free to reach out about that. I don't want to direct us too far away, but this is how embedded in shifting the system Angelica and I are. Like
Yeah.
it
And
is,
then
we've got to go from the systems level, like
exactly.
the
Yeah. And I really
grassroots.
like the metaphor you were using, Donna, that that we need to lead from the balcony to create the coherent systems, because when leaders are in the dance floor and they're caught in the movements and reacting to the steps and the rhythms and the missteps in real time, when leaders move to the balcony, they can really see the patterns, the timing, the gaps, and the flow. And I think that when they begin to be intentional about the shift from participating to orchestrating the systems that really set the rhythm of what should be happening, that means having aligned instructional frameworks, having clarified decision-making criteria, having reduced competitive initiatives, right? Because sometimes there's so many initiatives and then people are like, well, we've done that and that didn't work. And then you're doing it again and again. So I really feel that even having leaders look for the patterns, not in isolation, isolated problems, but again, being up there in the balcony and looking at those patterns that are continuously being repeated across the district and then trying to figure out, okay, no more initiatives. Let's go ahead and dive deeper into what really needs, what systems are broken, you know,
Mhm.
in order to effectively look at that capacity of teachers and the equity piece that we're talking about right now. And then I think Amy had her hand up, and then there's Stacy.
So this is a secret passion of mine. My dissertation was on the impact of family engagement on students' post-school outcomes if they had a disability. Really long like that. But I really dug deep into how do you build. So there's family participation coming to bake sales, family engagement, which is what we've been talking about, and then there's family partnership. And Dr. Karen Mapp at Harvard created the dual capacity building framework. You may know about it at dualcapacity.org. And I was the work that she did with IEL on building the capacity of family partnership across the country. I was the special ed parent representative on that group and got to be with all of the districts that were designing methods for family engagement and family partnerships. And so I used a lot of her framework in my dissertation and in my research. And I have a book on different ways you can involve families of kids at the secondary special ed level. And so, I mean, it's through CEC, but this, when I was the special ed graduate director, I taught a course on family engagement for people that were earning their special ed certification. And I had a project within that every student in my graduate course needed to come up with a project that would somehow engage families with some part of the dual capacity building framework. Just pick one piece and do a project. It could be with one parent. Some of them chose a parent that didn't speak English. Some of them chose, well, I want to work with the parents that don't understand the IEP process in my school. They chose, and then they all shared their projects, and we learned so much from each of them. What was striking to me was out of that class, two people went to their principal and said, I want to do a project for parents to let them know about what my curriculum is this year. And out of all of these people, two principals said, you are not doing a workshop for parents because an informed parent is a dangerous parent. It increases lawsuits. And so you do not have my permission to do this. And she was like, how am I going to do my project? So, we had to figure an alter. But if two principals out of that group, that small, there was that kind of reaction, that reaction is out there other places. Yeah. And there are administrators, like when you talk about being up in the balcony, like, oh, and I've had people say, like, when we're doing our inclusive initiative and we're changing your system, do you want to do something with families too and pull this in? And I'm told, well, let's get our act together first, and then we'll invite the families. But no. So I feel like I have to choose, okay, I'll move forward to help you with the way you're doing inclusion and special ed and all that. And then I'll throw in a few tips about families. But there's a part of me that goes, this needs to be embedded. Those kids are supported by their families and the families don't know what you're doing. So here's another really quick story, and I don't want to take time because I see Stacy has her hand up. I had somebody who was a parent. We were co-presenting at a conference, and she said, can I give some examples of what happens with school with my child? And so she said, I wanted to teach my child how to wash windows at home. And so I told her, you spray the little thing and then you go like this around the square, and then you go back and forth. And then I found out that people at school, and this was a child with significant disabilities, they were teaching her that you use circular motion when you wash windows. And they were you spray it and you go like this, and then you get in the little corners, but you do all the washing in circular. And she said, I was really frustrated because I would teach her, and then the next time I had her wash a window, she wasn't doing it right. And then I found out from school we're teaching two different methods. That's a very concrete example for how many other things, if we're teaching reading, teaching language acquisition, writing, how to follow through and complete your homework assignments, are we teaching kids conflicting pieces of information without, thinking about the impact of that?
Yeah.
So,
All right, Stacy.
Yeah, so and I'm going to segue into asking another question, uh, but I wanted to you was touched on earlier my passion about starting in higher ed with the experience I've had with upskilling programs for adults. Um, people coming out of college, but actually only having education in theory, and then the reason why I have been in these upskilling programs, because then the skills aren't there. But the reality is that there's not everyone can afford to go to college, and so that's why some of these things brought up, and I saw literally lives transform in multiple different things, but also the experience that I had that the the knowledge alone wasn't enough. So we started that we would get these people in these certifications, and then there still wasn't enough, even with the certifications geared towards a specific type of knowledge. We added mentorship, and then it was huge, right? And so that combination, and I started being passionate about what if we took that same idea of what I saw where a significant success, and the kind of changes that I saw were truly transformational and truly creating equity. If we had that same model into the, in as early as elementary school and into the schools, right, going through, and also looking at it the same way that the lens of why the upskilling was needed was that education has changed, the world has changed, and for me, technology was the focus because technology moves so fast we couldn't keep up with it. But that is actually influencing all of our lives, whether we're in technology or not, because that is having the impact on the kids because they're growing up starting with technology. And so um, I was going to ask the question of what's working, but also share some of the things that I've seen that have helped in classes and where I've seen, some of the good, right? In some areas where I've seen schools that have put additional actual experience, experiential learning. So, for example, you're teaching math, so you take the kids on a field trip that's math related, where they go in. This was one example where they went to a model store where they become store owners and they buy things and they sell, and that's teaching. They're young, right? This is elementary school, but they're teaching them math while they're having fun, right? And then in middle school, doing PowerPoint presentations that have visual and all that stuff for those that can actually present that do those presentations, and taking that, just all these different ways of meeting kids where they're at in different ways, and then taking kids and having them teach kids, because when you teach, you learn, right? And so adding that layer of it, and it builds leadership, it builds the skills. These are the types of things, I could go on, but I mean, these are the things where I saw, these are the changes that we see. Also, we're cutting art, right? And so I was on a project where we taught the art, because art was cut. And art actually teaches math. These are things that are helping. And then the equity piece of not everyone can have a computer and all that. Having a computer station, it's not ideal, but it's access, right? It's kids that don't have everything at home, making sure that if you're going to teach that, you have a space where the kids can go. And it also keeps them in, a place where they have a place to go, right? And so I saw that work with the kids that didn't have enough. They could hang out there, and that gave them confidence. And that those are the types of things that I see, that could be evolutional change, and easier said than done, right? Because it's a different mindset, but those are the things I've seen work. So I'd love to hear from others of what they see working, because we know there's a lot of things that aren't working, but are we seeing any things that are working?
Mhm. Well, Stacey, I think because of the exploratory piece of it, when they're in exploration mode of learning, there's emotions involved, right? They get excited, they laugh about it. The emotions create a connection of long-lasting memories.
Mhm.
And I'll just give you a brief example. When we had the 9/11, I'm sure all of you know exactly where you were during that time when you saw the news. However, if I tell you where were you on September 17th, you probably don't even remember, right? Because it wasn't emotional. There's no emotional connection to it. So the same thing with learning when they're happy and they're laughing and there's giggles and there's excitement and curiosity, the learning really happens because they begin to build connections. I mean, I'm going to go into a little bit of nerdy technology here. The working memory when when we're learning something, they're in the working memory space where they're holding it to see if they're going to make connections. If they don't make connections, they lose it. So then teachers wonder, well, I just taught it a few minutes ago. Well, there was no connections. They have no idea on how to process that information. So either you connect it or you lose it. Right. In fact, I just finished writing a book called Making Learning Stick. And it's all about working memory and the emotions and the excitement. So I love that you're talking about this because again, that touches the equity piece. I mean, it's for all kids, whether you're verbal, kinesthetic learner, visual learner, it doesn't matter what type of learning, you're engaging all types of learning styles there. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. I think, Stacey, you hit the nail on the head in so many ways. We, the whole reason Common Core came out, right, is because they got all of these businesses together and they said, what is it that we need, that our kids need? They got all these colleges together. What is it that our kids need? Well, they need to be creative and they need to be collaborative and they need to critically think and they need to know how to communicate in multiple ways. They need all of these skills. And on top of it, technology is moving faster than it ever has, and we're scared of it, right? We're scared of all of this AI because, oh my gosh, like going back, why are we gonna going all the way back to when I was a kid? Why would we put computers in a classroom, right? Why would we give kids access to the internet? There's so many bad things out there, right? AI. Why are we going to give kids access to, well, guess what? They're already using it. They're using all of it, and we can't. It's our responsibility as adults to help harness that, help them understand how to use it as a tool, and build those skills. I still have students who I had 25 years ago. They'll reach out to me and they'll say, "Hey, do you remember when you had us do this X, Y, and Z project?" And blah, blah. Like they remember things because, like Angelica said, it's sticky learning. And some teachers are great at doing that all the time. We have that out there and we need to celebrate them, not give them more and more and more work to do. We need to celebrate them and then be able to show others how they can make simple changes in their instruction to be able to get those same results. So I don't know.
Well, and I just, what what Dr. Donna just said. You know, helping kids and teaching kids explicitly how to communicate with each other when they're in a peer collaborative learning group, teaching them how to critically think, model your own thinking, that whole metacognitive piece, showing them how to do that and not just expecting that they're going to know how to do it. We have to teach kids how to do that. And I think in doing that, then we increase engagement. Like Stacy shared, you know, we can give kids these experiential opportunities and not feel like as teachers that we have to be leading and governing everything that kids do, that we can release them to do a lot of the learning and the thinking themselves. And that's when it sticks.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Wow. Another really riveting conversation.
I know, really good.
Amazing.
But Donna, just really quick, I know that before anybody else leaves, can you just give us like 30 seconds of why people should join these roundtable discussions, executive roundtable discussions? You could really briefly say who you are, what you do, and then why they should come next time before we move to the next topic, because I don't want to lose anybody else, and I really want to get a little capture of why you feel it's important to have these conversations.
Yeah, I'm going to stop the timer.
Mhm.
So I'll go first, and anybody who wants to chime in here can, but these conversations are so critical. We have them in little sidebars here and there with people or when we come across people, but it's really important to bring all of these brilliant minds together, these innovative minds together, these people together who have seen what works, who understand systems, and to bring more people in on the conversation so they can ask questions, get solutions to some of these challenges, go back and try them out. It's about connection. We need to connect together because we've got to stop working in silos. We've got to work as a bigger system to if we're going to change anything. And so this is really grassroots and trying to build something.
I would add to that that I see problems through my lens, and I've had many roles, so I see it through those roles, but I've never been a principal. I've never been a director of instruction, like, and I've never been an MLL, ELL teacher or a kid that's gone through that. So when I look at the problem and I look for possible solutions, I may not see all the dimensions. And having this kind of a roundtable to bring people together, I've heard things here that remind me of stuff I used to know, but I've also heard things today that I have not considered before. And this will strengthen the work that I do. And hopefully, I've contributed something that will strengthen the work that you do.
And I think that there are a lot of people and groups out there that are having these conversations, but again, they're having them in silos. And if we can come together as a larger collective and have a voice on some of this systemic change, that's when the big changes will be made, not just for teachers and other adults that work in schools, but the bottom line for all of that is kids. It's going to make a difference for kids.
I'd like to
And
add to, oh, sorry.
no,
I'd
go
like to,
ahead.
mhm. I'd like to add to that, that when we avoid talking about the system continues exactly as it is. And right now, there's too many students, families, and educators that are being shaped by structure that were never designed for them.
And I think that just to go after what Dr. Ava said, it the fact that the more people we have in the conversation, the more change that can happen that incorporates everyone because everyone needs to be part of the conversation that can give their own perspective so we can find the equity in creating something that's working because we can't go by the old rules because they don't work anymore. Maybe they never did. We learned how to adjust them in time. And now the future is our children. And so, let's invest in them and give them the skills and tools they need because it's not easy out there. And so I think the more that we look at these things as they are and come up with the ideas from so many diverse backgrounds, then we have that opportunity to make those changes and look at things a different way.
Yes. And if you're an educational leader today, you know that the biggest challenges we're facing aren't because leaders aren't working hard enough.
Yeah.
They're because our systems were never designed to work together. That's why we created Flipping the Script executive roundtables. This isn't professional development. It's a protective space for leaders to step back and see patterns and have real conversations about alignment, equity, and instructional coherence without adding more to your plate. So if you're ready to stop reacting and start leading from a high level, this space was designed for you. So I'm Dr. B. Okay.
Right.
To the
Thanks
next.
for that little interlude. Yeah, that was great. That was great. We'll end up probably using those little sound bites too. So awesome. All right. Are we ready to move into our last topic? I know this is long. I think when we do this in the future, we'll probably only do one or two topics. This was pretty um what's the word I'm looking for?
Intensive.
It
Yes,
was
intense.
intensive.
I was saying the same
It
thing.
was like a big vision, trying to do
Yeah.
everything all at once, and we
Yeah.
can't. We got to break it down into bite-sized pieces. But welcome back, welcome back. We're gonna carry on here, and I'm gonna turn it over to Dr. Amy to start off our next roundtable on teacher shortages in special education, and I will be joining her on that. All right. Take it away, Dr. Amy.
Okay. Well, I thought let's start with the facts. So I think I'm sharing my screen. You can see my screen. So the special ed teacher shortage. Okay, so let's start with what's the problem? Do you know last school year, and I haven't seen the statistics for this year, the last school year began with 406,000 teaching positions unfilled or uncertified across the United States. Wow. So just to get an impact of that, if 406,000 pilots didn't show up, it would shut down all aviation across the world. Yet we expected schools to lift off last fall. And I suspect it's even worse this year. So, I mean, we were talking earlier about the importance of instructional coaching and building capacity, and these principals that are putting uncertified teachers into spots and not giving them support. Whoa! So this is huge. What's your sense? Thumbs up or thumbs down? Do you think it went up or down in this year? I think it's up. I think it's scary. So here's another statistic for you. All 50 states reported special ed shortages. So it's not in one region. Everybody says there's a shortage of special ed. And here's another one that, as a graduate special ed director, this just breaks my heart. Each year, 16,000 more special ed teachers leave public schools than complete the special ed teacher programs. So you see the ones that finish their special ed certification and get hired as special ed teachers. However many that is, 16,000 more leave every year. And that's been true for more than a decade. Every year, 16,000 more are leaving. So I want to start with a little story. And then let's dig into what's going on here. So part of my role back when I was a special ed graduate director and then when I was a consultant is I would go into classrooms with the principal and we were looking for, I have this inclusion rounds rubric, what are the indicators of strong inclusive programs? And I'm looking, okay, in this classroom, there are a couple of students with their hands up. Look at this little wiggly guy in the front, like, is he getting what he needs? He has one finger up. Does that mean he might be? So I'm looking at instructional practice, what the teacher's doing. She's asking them a question. Some are really into it, some aren't. But then I went, wait a minute. This is a co-taught classroom. Where is the special ed teacher? And then I noticed she's standing in the back. And let's say this is one of the students who is graduating from my program or has graduated from my program. I've seen her work. I've seen the projects she's done. I saw how she problem solves scenarios. She knows her stuff. She knows how to differentiate. She understands universal design for learning. She knows student-driven learning. She knows how to assess evaluation. She knows instructional strategies and co-teaching, and she's standing in the back. And I went up to her before we left the room. And I said, why are you standing in the back? And she said, this was Teacher of the Year. She says that she got that award because she keeps the pacing guide going. And when I talk, it interrupts with her meeting the pacing guide. And she wants to keep her status. And if I keep interrupting her, then we're not going to get anywhere. And so I wait until she finishes her teaching, and then I work with my kids. Well, there's so much to unpack about that little story. That's a fictitious story, but it has happened so many times in so many ways, and I think it encapsulates so much of the problem. So Donna and I conspired and came up with two questions that we really want to dig into to unpack this. What are the root causes? This teacher said, this isn't why I became a special ed teacher. I don't know if I want to do this. And the statistics are very few of them make it to their 5th year of teaching. So why does she think I might as well just leave? What are the root causes? So we want to spend a little time looking at that. And then after we do, we'll move into what do you think are the possible solutions. So I'm going to stop sharing. And I'm actually going to put, let me go back here, in the chat, for those of you who want universal design for learning and want full participation, I'm going to put in the chat an organizer that everybody has editing rights. It's a Google Doc. And if you choose, and I hope you do, to go into that document, I've seen one person's in so far, then on the left-hand side, let's start recording what are the root causes. I want to capture the conversation that we're having. What are the root causes to, like, looking at that story or other stories you might know? Do we all agree this is a problem? I mean, we don't need to keep saying what the problem is, but let's dig why.
Mm-hmm. Can you
Why?
repeat the problem, the main problem?
The main problem is special ed teachers are leaving. Yep. Thanks for Angela for asking that. So Angelica, so like why are they leaving? So, oh, Donna's already starting to fill it in. So you can type on here, you can unmute and talk about it. So we have the timer going. So let's take like maybe the next 15 minutes to really see if we can unpack it. And then we'll move to the second question of what can we do about it? So Donna, do you want to say something about what you just wrote in there?
I think it goes back to some of our earlier conversation. Our systems were demanding so much from special educators. It's not manageable. We want them to co-teach, but we don't provide the structures for them to co-teach. We want them to manage caseloads of, a manageable caseload. I don't know what a manageable caseload is. To me, it should be like maybe 15 or 20 tops. And so you're managing all of these cases and you're getting pulled out of the classroom all the time for your IEP meetings and your check-in meetings and all of those things. And there's so much. I see someone on here put compliance and paperwork. Like there are so many layers for our special ed teachers that we're burning them out faster than we are our regular ed teachers. And it's just, I don't know. I don't know. And then when a special ed teacher says, you know what, I'm dual certified, I want to go in and I want to teach just math right now. Then we overload their classes with all of the special ed students because they're special ed certified. They should know what to do. So we're going to give them all of the big challenges. And so
Let me add on to that. I was talking to somebody who is a math teacher who was one of my grad students who was duly certified, and she said, I've had it with special ed. I'm going back to teaching math. Her principal said, since you're duly certified, I want you to still manage IEPs. And he gave her 15 kids on her caseload, yet she's the math teacher. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there anybody who can't pull this up? I could share my screen so you can see what we're typing as we go. You all have access. Oh, okay. All right.
And I was going to make a comment because this is a real case scenario in one of the schools that I was in, and feedback from the teacher that because there were additional aides in that special ed class, but in that school they used the special ed classroom as a place where they didn't know where to put kids that they were having problems with. And some of those really didn't fit into a category of special education. And some of them, it was purely that they needed to be taught English. So there might be a language issue. And then there were other situations where almost violent children, or violent children, not almost violent children, were put into those situations where that became the full-time work of that teacher because otherwise the other kids were in danger. And there wasn't the support around that. And so I think that scenario repeats itself depending on where that school is located. And so I think that's a real challenge when you don't have, they weren't given the authority to make the decisions that that some of them were put in positions where they weren't safe.
And I'm just going to call it like it is, okay? The reality is that when you're going to go get a surgery, you don't go to a generalist, right? You go to a specialist for that surgery or that specific illness that you have. And the reality is that we're not naming out loud. Today's teachers are no longer just instructors or teachers. They're educators, instructional specialists, emotional first aid responders, protectors, safety monitors, counselors, advocates, family liaisons, problem solvers, and so on and so on and so forth. They are being asked to hold together systems that were never designed to support them, often for compensations that does not reflect the scope, the expertise, and the responsibility and the roles that they're playing, right? And at the same time, I want to say that teachers are really shaping our future leaders and thinkers and citizens, and yet they are not rarely recognized or treated as the specialists that they truly are. So this mismatch creates a dangerous tension with high responsibility, high emotional labor, low recognition and authority. And at the end, they're just going to give up and they're going to go where there's a higher pay and that they're very center focused on what their role is, you know? So it is, well, they're not paid enough either.
Yeah.
Dr.
Yeah,
Oh, go ahead. Oh, thanks.
Go ahead.
Dr. Amy, I added IEP or compliance and paperwork, but I also added contentious IEP meetings with advocates and district personnel. I've seen a shift in the way IEP meetings are held. When I was in the classroom and I had IEP meetings, they were for all intents and purposes, lovely conversations about what's best for students and how to support that particular student. They lasted maybe an hour and then it was wrapped up and it was lovely. I have heard and I've witnessed IEP meetings that are hours long. District personnel are coming in where they don't have any business being in the meeting if it's just a typical annual review or an amendment. The parents are bringing in advocates and the advocates are aggressive and angry and demanding, and it's building this culture that IEP meetings and supports for kids needs to be a place where we're demanding and we're angry, and it doesn't have to be that way. But for special ed teachers that are case managers that are trying to lead a meeting, they haven't been trained to handle aggression. I was in an IEP meeting and I had a principal stand up over the table and raise her voice at people sitting around the table, and it's just it's ugly and it's uncomfortable and it's so stressful for a case manager, a leader of the meeting, to then try to wrap up a meeting that's been hours long. They now have to go back to teach, where emotions are high, their cortisol, adrenaline is racing through their bodies, and they have to go back and teach. And not only that, they also now are being told they have to, their kids are going to get compensatory services because they missed minutes because they were in the meeting for too long. So it's this vicious cycle where it's almost like a blame. It's a blame situation for those special educators that are doing their best and trying their best, but there's all kinds of negative energy that's coming at them while they're just trying to do their job and support kids.
Yeah.
I'd like
And
to
Wow,
add,
there's so
hard.
much in what you said.
Yeah, and it's so hard. So, I'm trained in energy leadership, and it's so hard when you're knee deep and you've got that cortisol pulsing through your veins to shift from being catabolic and reactive to then being anabolic and being more proactive. And so the system is designed to keep us in that reactive mode rather than allowing us to be more proactive.
Right. And I, just as another added piece, that feeling of being in that fight or flight stage, I've had teachers say to me, I'm going to choose a position where I make less money, but I have less stress. And that's the reality. And
Mhm.
there are definitely people that can afford to do that if their partner is making, a significant wage, but not everyone can do that.
Right.
that's right. And there's a constant pressure to fix everything.
Yes.
When you're in the room, the first glance or glare is at you, the special educator.
Right.
Fix it. And
And
it's
that goes
unrealistic.
to,
Oh,
can you
go ahead.
fix that student? That student's having trouble. Can you fix them? And, it's like there's no magic wand that fixes them and they're not broken. They just need to learn differently. So, yeah, it's like, and the parent, have you fixed my child yet?
Right.
But on the other hand, it goes the other way. Going back to the earlier conversation we had about families, I would have teachers that would call me and say, my son is on the autism spectrum. And they would say, do you know your son is not getting along with the other kids? He has difficulty interacting with them. Can you talk to him tonight? Like, oh yeah, by morning, I'm sure I'll have a conversation with him, and by morning everything will be fine. Thank you for calling me. Like, so then, when teachers are interacting with families that way, then families are like, well, then you fix him. So you fix this situation. Why wasn't my son invited to the birthday party?
Yeah.
Mhm.
And the other thing, I just want to say that like I've been doing contract work also as a diagnostician, like last year. And one of the campuses that I was at, they had about 450 students. And when I got there, they had 100 referrals already sitting there. During that whole year, they probably referred 60 more. By the time I left, they had 75 more referred. So we're talking about half of the campus being referred for special ed because I think there is a belief and a myth that we have that magic wand that we can fix anything because we put a label on them, right? And
Well,
and
yeah.
then we're red flagged. I was red flagged because I completely said, no, I am not testing all these kids. Like
Hmm.
I really had, I was very firm. So at the end, because I didn't stay and because I didn't assess all these kids, I was red flagged and said, do not hire again. But you know what? It's okay. It's okay. I'm not going to do a disjust with these kids because they feel they need to be labeled.
That says something about tier one instruction, doesn't it?
Ding,
Exactly.
ding, right
Yep.
there,
Yeah.
right there.
I
And
was
I,
raising my hand to say just that and say how many kids are being referred to special education evaluations because their tier one instruction is poor.
Exactly.
hmm And tier two.
Mhm.
It starts at tier one,
Yes.
but
Yeah.
then that impacts tier two. I worked in a school that they're when you think of the tiered model, the RTI model, and tier one instruction is the biggest piece. Well, so many schools have that either flipped upside down or they basically have this bulge in the middle. Like all these kids are in tier two. Not that many kids need tier two instruction. And in tier three is really where it's not necessarily special education, but you know, if you have a student in tier three instruction and you're doing your due diligence and you're collecting data, then you have the right to say, hey, like let's take this further because we're out of options here.
Yeah. Actually,
Uh,
special ed belongs in all three tiers. Like,
yeah, oh true, true.
let's give some accommodations and some differentiation in UDL in tier one. And then,
Absolutely.
yeah, as long as
Well,
it,
and in
it fits. Let's shift to talking about, okay, so we could keep going with the problem. I think we have a pretty good picture of this. And by the way, I write a blog every 2 weeks, and I'm going to use these notes to do my blog for next week. So just saying, I'm using this, and I hope I mean, I think this is all common knowledge, and if anybody's concerned, we can let me know. But anyway, let's move over to the right-hand column. What are the solutions? What little actions could we take that could really impact this?
Yeah. Well, I heard one of the things that I'm thinking about is in mindset and I don't know if it was DJ. Somebody said something along the lines of, they're always hearing, or maybe it was you, Amy, along the lines of hearing the special ed teacher say, well, after I think it was Amy, after the teacher's done, then I just work with my kids. I think that mindset of my kids versus your kids is way too prevalent in many of our classrooms. I, as a leader, would much rather walk into a classroom and not be able to tell who is the special education teacher and who is the regular ed teacher because they're both highly trained teachers, right? They're both doing the work and they have the mindset of these are our kids, not my kids and your kids. These are all our kids and we both have something that we can offer to them. But in order to make that work, again, it goes back to the systems. We have to set up the systems so that the special educator and that general educator have time to collaborate. It can't be the general educator does the lesson plan and then hands it to the special educator 2 minutes before class and says, here's what we're doing today. That doesn't work. That doesn't work at all. They have to have time to be able to work together so that they can plan together and be more impactful.
The other thing on that
Hold
note,
1 second. I just
okay.
took all of the cells and made it one long because I don't want to have to match the solution. I think solutions don't have to match the left-hand column. So I made it one long column. So
Perfect.
yeah.
Okay. Well, I just want to touch base on what you said, but just extend it a little bit, where I would be walking into this classroom, and I'm just going to say Johnny, but that's not his name. I would go in and I would always see Johnny like sleeping in the morning, after lunch, after recess. Like I could go into that classroom or two classrooms because they would exchange classes, and the student would always be sleeping. So I asked, why is he always sleeping? They're like, oh, because he doesn't belong here. And it was so sad to hear that. It was like, what do you mean he doesn't belong here? It's like they couldn't engage him, they couldn't keep him active. So the student ended up just giving up, right? So I think that's another piece in special education that teachers sometimes just quit on students, and then because they don't know how to help them, they're just overwhelmed, frustrated, and they just totally give up and might have some shame or guilt happening. I'm not sure, but I've seen it not only with Johnny, but many, many other kids.
Yeah.
Mm.
I've seen similar things, whether they're special ed or not. I've seen that with students who are, repeating a grade and they're off to the side, and I think I'm gonna call it what it is, right? That is right there when we're disengaging students like that and setting them aside for any parts of our classes. That is the begin, and especially when it's in an elementary school, that is the beginning of the school to prison pipeline. We are not seeing our students' geniuses that are within them and bringing them out when we do that. Unfortunately, I had to tell a teacher that one time. It was quite some direct feedback.
I put all teachers need to be clear about the role of the special ed teacher. Like the example that I gave of that student, like the general ed teacher had no idea how to use a special ed teacher or the MLL teacher or the speech therapist who's pushing in, or like I guess I'm still the teacher and I don't know what to do with them. And I shouldn't be telling another teacher what to do, but I know I don't like it when they do that. So if they haven't broken the barrier about here are possible roles and here's how you can work collaboratively, then they start, oh, never occurred to me that that's why you were here. You mean when you interrupt and you're using second voice to restate what I just said? I just said that. Why are you interrupting me? Well, I'm doing it because brains have drifted away. And when I restate it, then it anchors it, and having that second voice changes the way the brain perceives it. Then the teachers go, oh, I see I'm losing some kids. Can you say something? And now there's this welcome of, now you have a role here that's valuable.
Yeah. Absolutely. Absolutely.
How about this one? I had a teacher who was a special ed teacher and was really frustrated that she couldn't use a lot of what she needed, but she would work with the kids when they were doing their seat work, their practice, and she would go around and she helped. And she said, today a student said to me, you're really good. Have you ever thought about being a teacher? Mm-hmm. And she was like, oh my gosh, I am not an assistant. I'm not a volunteer. I have a master's degree in special education. And a kid asked me if I've ever thought of being a teacher. Mm-hmm. So what has to change? What actions could we take to I've heard that so many times. I'm sure some of you have heard it too. Like, what do we need to change? So that's driving teachers away. I didn't go through all my training to do this.
Absolutely. And I think that goes back to these are our kids, and special educators are teachers too. And they need to also be having the opportunities for kids to see them as teachers, not as the teacher's aide or, the person that's only going to work with those kids, or the paraprofessional. Like they need to be seen as teachers.
Well, and just the way we want inclusion for children, we also need to have inclusion for adults in the building. So that means special educators are also invited to PLCs. They're included in staff meeting agenda items. There's an inclusion of teachers that the special educator has a very, very valuable role in our school, and that the school leaders treat all teachers with equity.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
Yes, I even want to touch on another experience. I mean, since I was in education forever, just like many of you, we have so many experiences. But one of them was when I was teaching children with multiple disabilities, and they were babies from 3 to what I think 11 years old. And we were in a self-contained setting. So I wanted them to participate in library and music and art and PE. And I wanted them to be also being on stage and performing. And they're like, when I brought it up to the principal, she's like, I don't believe you're asking this. It's like, why not? Right? I had some of these kids being in like start being included into the general ed setting, even if they had Down syndrome and they were in wheelchairs and I had cerebral palsy and they just couldn't understand me, right? I think I was a troublemaker in the school system for a long time, but it's okay, right? It's okay. And but I got a lot of these kids included and participating. And yes, many times I wanted to throw in the hat and say, I give up because I think I was also looked at like if I had special ed, right? I wasn't included in some professional development. I wasn't included in some of the parties. And I had to bring it up and say, I'm not special ed. Like I don't. And if I did, why would that be a problem? And why wouldn't you be inviting me to these uh, parties or places as a teacher, right? So I think, I'm even getting emotional just remembering of all those situations. And that's what makes teachers leave because, yeah, students feel they don't belong. But sometimes as a special ed teacher, we feel we didn't belong either. So then we tend to leave. I didn't leave. I really pushed to becoming a director. Even as a director, sometimes I wasn't even heard. But I pushed, I don't know if Avis remembers or not, but I pushed so hard to
Mhm.
be heard. And even then, I don't think I was accepted very well because I was very outspoken as a director in the leadership meetings.
So if we're talking about from the leadership point of view, I want to introduce two topics. One is special ed directors who are being told your job is compliance. Reduce lawsuits. In fact, a special ed teacher, a special ed director who's been working in a district for 10 years told me when she started, about 10% of her time was involved with lawsuits. Now 90% of her time is involved with legal action. And yet she's told, handle that problem and get student test scores up, but you can't be involved with any professional development. You just handle the compliance side. So she's not invited to instructional meetings at the district with the Department of Instruction, like, oh no, you're in student services. You're not part of instruction, but you better get those special ed test scores up. So that's one part of the leadership. And the other part of it is the school principal. So a RAND study about 2 years ago of 3,500 principals, the findings were 12% of the principals felt prepared to lead special ed in their building. 12%. So if they don't understand special ed scheduling, they don't understand the importance of all the things we've talked about, including the special ed teachers in PLCs or in professional development, if they don't understand how to supervise them. I had a principal say to me once, I don't know what special ed should look like, but you know that classroom we just walked out of? I don't think that was it, right? I don't know what it should look like. So how can you help me be a better principal? And I thought, okay, so we've got the problem looking at it. So I guess I'm going up into the balconies here, Donna. Like how do we help the leaders set the conditions so that the teachers can do
Mhm.
what they need to do so they can do what they need to do with the kids?
I want to really address this because when I was hired in this district that Avis and I worked in at, I was hired because I was going to be the inclusion and curriculum director, right? Making sure that students were moved into more inclusive classrooms. We were on the 12% list with TA here in Texas for more than 3 to 4 years, meaning that a lot of the kids were in segregated classrooms or self-contained classrooms, resource classrooms. So when I went in, I would go into the campuses, review each individual student's folder, and then tell the leaders, you need to go back to art, meaning the meetings, the annual meetings for students with special ed, so that they can review it and do a different placement. And they're like, wait a minute, you are not an art decision maker. I said, I'm not, but this is the criteria for decision making. So I had to create a criteria so they can see students with a different lens and say, okay, if students were not functioning with below 2 to 3 grade levels, then they could participate in inclusive setting at this level, and then being able to design how they would be making decisions for kids. And within a year, I helped them hold arts. They did not like me because of the shift and the mindset that had to take place, but a lot of changes did occur. Um, Avis, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that period of time when I was hired and all this chaos happened. But it's you have to put criteria, decision-making frameworks in place so that they understand how they're going to be making the decisions specifically for a group of kids, which is special ed in this case.
You're recalling back then. I was so happy you were there because you did change. You made an effect. It was very good. We brought the students that were in self-contained that didn't need to be there out into the general education setting, which was better for the student in whole. So I was very happy. And anytime I had the chance to invite you, I would. Job well done.
I think, and I like it, you address, I mean, we're addressing, a systemic issue, and ultimately the leader of a school district, the superintendent, also needs to hold this vision, right? So they need to be instructional leaders, and they need to set the tone and the expectation that the people that are just underneath him or her um, are, all of those directors, that they're going to coordinate together. And it takes time for them to plan. I worked in a district where that was happening regularly, and we started to see silo walls broken down. And then that leadership at the top, multiple positions shifted, and then certain people started being left out of those meetings and conversation. And now all of a sudden, those people, I was one of them, everyone's looking to me for answers to questions that they have, and they don't understand why I don't have the answers anymore. I used to have all the answers, and then I could direct them for more information because I was included in those meetings. But then when you get left out, so that also, that expectation has to start at the top so that the people, the systems are able to develop and work as well. And so I think we need to also work with some superintendents in developing their vision of what instructional leadership looks like and what their role really is in instructional leadership. That could be a whole nother roundtable topic.
Exactly. But I think the two big rocks, if we really look at the big rocks that would hold special education, would be redesigning special education roles around instruction and not compliance, like many of you already mentioned. And then the other big rock would be integrate special education into the core instructional system, right?
Yes.
For the teachers not to work in silos, for students not to be pulled out during core instruction, the workload, right, that we've been talking about, and then the blaming. If students are not making progress, we blame the special ed staff instead of taking partnership and ownership between special ed and general ed. You know, the students belong to all of us, not just special ed teachers.
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Angelica, you said two things, and I'm capturing one of them, and so I'm losing the second.
The second one was integrate special education into the core instructional system.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Thank
absolutely.
you.
Yeah.
Absolutely. We've got to stop allowing systems and initiatives to continue to be created that are alongside or going in a different direction than what our instructional core is. Because that's where you see all these breaking down, and every time part of special ed or part of our ENL or part of socio-emotional learning or any one of those systems, it starts fracturing our core, right? And there's only so many times that that core can be fractured before it just starts to crumble and fall to the ground. And that's when schools or districts end up being taken over by the state, seen as being an ineffective school, because ultimately our kids aren't going to be able to produce the outcomes. We have to be able to align that. And so again, one of the things that we've talked so much about systems, and it's just making me smile inside because we need to refocus on the systems. And so it's aligned with some of the work that I'm working on now. I have a diagnostic that I'm about to launch and pilot for future ready instructional leadership, and it focuses on the systems, getting at the higher level so you can see what's happening, and then getting underneath instead of just creating these things on the side, getting underneath and addressing what are we going to be committed to?
Mhm.
Are we going to be committed to making sure our instructional coaches are doing the work that's most impactful? Are we going to be committed to ensuring that our special educators have time to plan with the teachers that they co-teach with? Like those types of things, we really have to dive in. And we're not going to be able to solve all of the things at once. But,
Yeah.
schools have to pick off bit by bit what what work is going to have the biggest bang for their buck.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And then keeping in mind that teachers don't leave students, they leave broken systems, you know.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You can take a teacher out of the system, but you can't take the teacher, or you can't take what am I trying to say? You can take a teacher out of the system, but you can't take all those pieces of the system out of the teacher.
There you go.
Carry that forever,
Yeah.
right? We carry it forever.
Hmm.
DJ, you've got your hand up.
Donna, I like what you said about the fractured core instruction. And I think the way core instruction is designed, I think the way the instructional model that most schools are using are not designed to meet the needs of kids that we currently have in our school system. I think core instruction is not designed to meet the majority of students. And I talk a lot about, kids that are like that fit inside the box and kids that are outside the box. And I think, maybe 40, 50 years ago, 90% of the kids could be reached using the core instructional model. But I feel like today we have 30, 40% of kids that are outside the box thinkers. They're creative thinkers. They're kids with disabilities. They're gifted kids. They're the MLL kids. I mean, the core instruction is what needs to shift, and the model
Hmm.
that teachers are using.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
And what that brings up is, so we've looked up from the balcony, but if we go right down to the center of the dance floor and we look at an individual kid who may be struggling for whatever reason, and then we do some diagnostic, and then the teacher goes, well, I don't know how to help them. I don't know how to help them. There isn't a system to help them. But now we have a label that we've stapled on the kid's forehead. And then people say, oh, now they go in that room, or now they have that support. And then that means we're going to change our expectations because they have that label. And what that does to the kid and what that does to the family and what that does, how teachers view that kid. Like, yes, the label is helpful if it's helpful. But if it reduces the expectation, that's not helpful for anybody. When I just think about the kids that I would place out on jobs that had no idea what their disability was. But they just knew they went into that room and that all the other kids made fun of them and they tried to pretend. So, they'd wait until after the bell rang to run in so people wouldn't see what room they were going in. Like
Mhm.
what?
Yeah.
So how do we address I really believe every special educator, it's been said here a couple of times, probably every teacher, but I can speak for the special ed teachers. They want to be that teacher. They want to be the one that when kids have me, their life changes. I've made a difference
Mhm.
in that, there maybe I won't reach every kid, but I'm sure going to reach that kid. And I'm, like the old throw the starfish story.
Yeah.
Like I want to be the teacher that does that. And if the system is not set up for them to get that satisfaction, they're going to leave.
Yeah. And I've also heard the term accessibility brought up today, and UDL, which is Universal Design for Learning, and those pieces. And accessibility it's about, and maybe you mentioned we give because the kids got the label on their forehead. We set different expectations and we start to make excuses. Oh, this kid can't do this because of this, right? And that's not okay. We still have to help them access grade level material and access grade level curriculum and grade level skills and concepts and things like that. So we also need to be rethinking. This goes back to tier one and sometimes tier two or tier three instruction is how do we redesign that accessibility piece so that they can access it? And whether there are accommodations or modifications. Sometimes it's as simple as giving them a graphic organizer or a tool to help them see
Mm-hmm.
something different or allowing them to draw out the concept as they're listening. Um, we just have to think differently about our students who are differently abled. We're all differently abled in different ways. We have to be able to see the genius in each one of our students, even when it's not our genius and we can't truly relate to it. We have to still be able to see it, identify it, and then figure it out, and us be the learner.
I
Absolutely.
listened to a podcast this morning that has been haunting me ever since I listened to it. And it was this guy. I have to listen to the rest of it because it was time to join you all. But he said the role of education should be teaching kids to think. Now that we have so much information available and so much technology and AI and all the rest of it, if kids are using AI so they don't have to think, then they're not going to grow their brain cells. It's like he gave the analogy, if I want to exercise, I should go run a mile. But if I don't feel like it, well, gee, I can get in my car and drive a mile. And now, can I count that as exercise? So AI is like, getting in the car and I can do it. So how do we set up schools so that whatever it is, yes, you don't have to memorize everything because it's very accessible to you. And especially with all this technology, how do we teach you to think? And how do we actually encourage teachers to think? not just follow the curriculum guide, not just, but the joy of, you know, all of us can think of a time when we didn't know what to do, we didn't know what to do, and then we figured it out. And that excitement of I figured this out. Are we allowing teachers to figure it out? That's what's going to keep special ed teachers. Now that's my final word.
Oh my gosh.
But the music was like, yeah, you're right on the spot and dot on target.
I love this. Yeah, phew. I think so. I want to, and Angelica, you can say otherwise. I'm thinking that we take the intentional networking and we change that because, so I want to do a little summary here. We've talked about English language learners or multi-language learners. We've talked about cognitive theory. We've talked about building capacity and equity and parent and family and community engagement and versus participation and these teacher shortages in special ed. And I kind of want to synthesize this a little bit in a forward path. So I have a question that I'm just going to throw out there because we've talked about so much today in like just under 3 hours. And I have loved every moment of it. And I'm like reeling. This is like the highlight of my week. But if schools or districts could do just one thing in the next 90 days, what would you say they should be doing? And I want to give everyone a chance to respond to this who's on the call. Go for it, Dr. Amy.
I think if schools can set up a safe culture for teachers to collaborate and problem solve and build collective efficacy, there's going to be some teacher in that group that will go and find a great idea and experiment with it. And if we have a collaborative problem solving culture in a school, then if there's PD, then it's going to have more impact. If there isn't PD, they'll figure it out themselves because some schools just don't have the funds for PD anymore and like, all the rest of it. But if we want teachers to feel it's a lonely job and there's a lot to be handled, and if they have the culture that they can problem solve with their colleagues, whether it's an MLL teacher, a special ed teacher, a speech therapist, the diagnostician, like how can we set up collaborative where the principal says, I trust you guys to figure this out. How can we do this? And you have that kind of a culture. I think everything else can fall into place. Without it, I think nothing else can work. That's my thoughts.
Absolutely. Stacy.
I think this follows on what I was going to say. I'm going to follow on what Dr. Amy said and kind of take it to the next level. The only way you can fix something is if you know what the problem is. And although I think many of the people know what the problem is in different silos, having that culture of openness, because that's where it'd have to start to have it, but take the opportunity to gather the feedback of what the most pressing issues are at that time and and also brainstorm and solutions and start with the number one, because there'll probably be a similar problem coming up over and over, right? And start there and the reason why I say that is because we know there's a lot of fractures. The word is fractures, and that become what I see happen, and this happens in not just education, but other areas. It becomes overwhelm and it becomes the freeze. It's too much, it's too big. I can't say, we don't have the money, we don't, right? But if you start there, openness, identify the problem, collaborate on solutions, and pick the top one and start there. That would be my, because then that builds If you can do that and it's actionable, right? Don't pick something that's not actionable, like we need more money or whatever. You know what I mean? Something that they have within their power, it's empowering. And that you go from there. And I do that in my own life too. Like when I become overwhelmed and I feel like I have all these little things, I find one thing I can do so that it gets me going to get the rest done because otherwise, because I suffer from that myself. And but I've seen that impact in doing that in organizations and in groups. And so that would be my plan if I had the keys.
All right, DJ.
So I think my shift builds on to what Stacy and Amy both said. So I think, if a district has instructional coaches, they have support staff that can go out and support teachers in schools, but they're limited. Instead of spreading them thin, be intentional with how you're using your instructional coaches. Have them have a purpose. So an idea could be have instructional coaches attend PLCs and reach multiple teachers at once regarding a certain topic. Be there as a support and build trust that way. Another idea is have coaches hold solution sessions. Be available for teachers, whether it's on Zoom or on Teams or going out to a school. Be available. Like, Dr. Amy said that teaching can be a very lonely profession. Sometimes it just helps to have that one person there that you can bounce an idea off of and come up with a solution. I talk a lot about making that shift from problem solving to being solution centered. Let's come up with solutions and let instructional coaches be those leaders that can help teachers get solution centered and not feel so alone.
Mm-hmm.
And I would like to add, by giving teachers time, by removing work instead of adding more work, remove the work. And instead of having coaches for struggling teachers, have coaches for every teacher.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and I hear all the things that people are saying here, and I agree with all of it. And I think that I would encourage principals and assistant principals, directors, superintendents, the people who are leading this work. Your job is you have to remember that your job is to clear the way, clear out the junk, clear out the things that don't work, and pave the way for things to get in alignment. So you've got to look at your systems, all of them, not just one of them, all of them from the dance floor or from the balcony, right? Mm-hmm. You've got to listen to all of your people on the dance floor. They're telling you what the problems are and they're telling you how to solve them. And then you've got to get into the basement and you've got to find the root of those problems and you've got to make commitments. You've got to commit to what you are going to do, what you're not going to do anymore, what you're going to continue to do, what you're going to take off plates. You have like leaders, we have to be able to take the time to do that. We get stuck in the day-to-day operational things. Let's really try to refocus ourselves on the things that are going to make the biggest impact.
Are you secretly an architect? Because you've been up in the balcony and down in the basement and on the dance floor.
My secret is out. I am a systems architect. I'm going to put that on my LinkedIn profile now. Systems architect. Yeah. All right, Dr. B, any final words?
Well, I just want to say, I mean, based on everything we've said today, and as we're closing this executive roundtable, I just want to thank everybody for the depth of leadership and the honesty and the systems level thinking that showed up in this space. I really want to congratulate all of us for stepping up and really speaking our truth. on what we have observed. And what today's reinforced is something we all already know, right? The challenges that we're facing in education are not isolated. There are gaps in system design, and those gaps won't close unless leaders are willing to name them. They have to document them and they have to share what needs to change. We need, as leaders, I really feel that they need to stop being afraid of speaking up because they're going to get fired, right? Um, they really need to tell the truth of what's happening. And that's why I want to extend an invitation. If you haven't joined yet as a contributing author in Flipping the Script collaborative book, I want to encourage you to consider writing a chapter. This opportunity is to capture the gaps you see, the constraints leaders are navigating, and the system level shifts that must happen for schools and educators to thrive. This book is not about theory. It's about elevating real leadership perspectives that can influence how systems are redesigned. And of course, we're going to continue these executive roundtables every other month, and Donna's going to dive deeper into that, building on the conversations we started here. And the book allows this work to live beyond the room, to inform, to inform, challenge, and guide leaders who need to hear it. If you know a district or campus leader who should be part of these conversations or part of the book, I invite you to bring them forward. And thank you, all of you, for your clarity, for your courage, for the purpose. And I'm excited and I'm looking forward to continuing these conversations and working together because this has been my passion like forever from being a child and feeling broken and not feeling that I belong. And let me tell you, not only did I not feel that I belong here, but because I wasn't raised in Mexico, I didn't even felt that I belonged there. So when a student like me feels they don't belong where they were born, and then they don't belong where they're residing, where do they belong, right? So I think that's the work of leaders to help children from all cultures to feel that they belong and then building a system that really works to address all the learning needs that they might have. And so I invite you to continue working with us and showing up, bringing people into the conversations and make this group bigger and bigger because I'm telling you, we're going to collect data of what's working, what's not working, and then really our hope is that many, many districts really get to know us and invite us to their districts. And hopefully you come along, right,
Yeah,
Donna?
absolutely. Thank you for sharing your heart with us.
Mhm.
So our next executive roundtable, Angelica and I talked before this, and we've started plotting out like we knew we wanted to do this again, and now that we've done this the first time, I am 1,000% in convinced that we still need to continue doing these conversations. So our next executive roundtable will be April 6th. So we're going to do every other month for now because it's a big ask to come to the table, even if it's an hour or 2 hours. This first one was 4 hours. It'll end up being 3.5 by the time we get done here, but um, we're gonna probably shorten them a little bit. But every other month, it'll be the first Thursday of every other month. So April 2nd is the next first Thursday of 2 months from now. Um, so if there's everyone has a better way to say that, please let me know. Um, and then the other piece is we mentioned earlier that we have
Hold on a second.
yeah,
You said it was April 6th, and then you said April 2nd.
second.
So
It's the second, it's the
it's the second.
Thursday.
Okay.
It's the Thursday. So it might have just been me stumbling over my words. That sometimes happens. Thank you for that, for asking me to clarify. So it'll be April 2nd. And then the other piece, so not only do we have an open call for authors for our flipping educational luminaries, flipping the script book, but we also, as I said earlier, we have launched the Angie's List or the Fiverr or the Thumbtack for education. So educational consultants, you'll have a place where you can create a profile, you can communicate in the background with each other, you can get reviews from people, um, and school and district leaders, you will have a one-stop shops to really access some people who we're not all out there in the mainstream, but there's a lot of talent out there. There are a lot of people, and Angelica and I have been on a mission for since what,
20,
2023
yes, I think.
to really meet and engage with and bring people together who are experts in their own right.
Mhm.
Right. And so you're people who have the lived experiences. We are all people who we have the expertise. We know the research. We're practitioners. We're doing the work. We're not just the university professor. Not that I'm knocking them, but a lot of times the university professors, they're studying what they're doing, but they're not living the actual experience that they're
Mhm.
studying. So we're trying to pull together these people who bring it all together and they understand what works in systems and in
Mhm.
our schools and what's not working. So,
So the
um,
business is called Improve Ed Exchange.
yep. And we actually, I have a little flyer here somewhere on my screen. Let me see if I can find it. I'll share it if I can find it. Oh, there it
Mhm.
is. There it is. That's our little thing here. So Improve Ed Exchange. We just launched it, what, 2 days ago? One
Yes,
day ago?
one day ago.
We're so excited. So we'll still be working out kinks and stuff, but we have an introductory offer. There's a free trial, and then you can also use this code to get 20% off if you end up wanting to do a paid version. We also have a free account too, and that to get started and get in there. So we would love to have you join us. And um just
And if you want
thank
to
you.
give us any tips on what to do next, we would appreciate that too. I
Yeah.
mean, we're open for suggestions on what shifts you would like to see maybe next time.
Mhm. Yeah.
Donna, I
So,
think there's a typo in improve has an extra O. I tried to put that in. I just did a copy paste. See that?
oh, there
Oh,
is a typo in there.
um,
Oh man, I will fix that. Thank you. Ugh,
we were
I'll fix
testing
that.
you. I'm just kidding.
Uh,
How
that's what we
embarrassing.
all see. It's those little mistakes that you don't even see that somebody else can catch that can make it more valuable. And it's like
Absolutely.
there should not be embarrassment or blame or finger
Mhm,
pointing. It's the kids falling down as they learn to walk. And it's
mhm,
like
Yeah.
it's part of the process and it's no big deal. And um, so are should I be embarrassed to tell you and I shouldn't point out like, it's like
Nope.
there's this whole culture we have about mistakes that
Shame.
needs to be thrown
Mm,
out so
mhm.
that's how we're
Same
going to
thing.
learn.
Well, because
Absolutely.
Amy, we were in that era of the red pen. It was like you got something wrong, it was marked with red, and then when you got it, it was like, whoa, like especially me, right? A language learner having difficulties in the class, and you're just like, whoa, you don't even want to see it. You don't want anybody to know, and being shameful and guilty of not knowing how to even ask for help, right?
Right.
So, but I think you addressed a very important point that we need to step out of that
Yep.
phase of being told on some errors that we're
Perfect.
making. But anyways, we're open.
Perfect way to embrace the we complete each other, we don't compete. And I just love that saying. And I want to thank you all for bringing your expertise, for bringing your passion, your hearts, and for your leadership and the work that you're all doing out there. Let's make education great. And on that note, I am going to stop recording. And those who are on the call